They say you can't choose your family, but you can choose when to stop begging them to see you. For 35 years, I was the forgotten daughter, the one who didn't need attention, the practical one. While my sister got birthday parties, I got overlooked. While she got their pride, I got their silence. So when I got engaged, I thought maybe this time they'd finally choose me. I was wrong. Your sister's wedding is the family priority. We can't come to yours. My mother said, her voice flat final. I smiled. That's okay, Mum. What she didn't know, I wasn't the struggling daughter they'd erased from their story. I was a self-made millionaire with an $8 million oceanfront mansion in Palm Beach, and I was about to get married there without them. But when the wedding photos went viral, everything changed. My phone exploded, my family froze, and my sister, she declared war. What happened next wasn't just about a wedding. It was about the moment I stopped earning love and started demanding respect. Stick around, because what my family did after they found out, you won't believe it. My name is Lindsay Bryant. I'm 35 years old, and I design interiors for some of the most exclusive homes along the eastern seaboard. On paper, my life looks perfect. Beautiful office overlooking Palm Beach, a portfolio that speaks for itself, clients who trust me with their $1 million visions. But there's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being successful in a world where the people who raised you don't even know who you've become. I learned early that love in my family wasn't distributed equally. It was rationed, reserved. And I wasn't the one it was reserved for. Emily was 8 when the doctors found the problem with her heart. I was 12. I remember sitting in that hospital waiting room, my algebra homework spread across my lap while my parents disappeared behind those heavy double doors for hours. When they finally came out, my mother's face was streaked with tears and my father looked like he'd aged a decade. Emily would need surgery, maybe more than one. The doctors said it was serious. From that day forward, our house revolved around Emily. Her medications, her appointments, her need for quiet, for rest, for careful monitoring. I understood it at first. Of course I did. She was sick, she needed them. But somewhere along the way, needing them became the same as deserving them. And not needing them meant you could be forgotten. I have this memory that comes back to me sometimes, usually late at night when I can't sleep. My college graduation, cap and gown honours cord around my neck, magna cum laude in architecture. I'd worked myself half to death for that degree, juggling 2 jobs and a full course load because there was no trust fund, no safety net. Just me and my stubborn refusal to quit. I'd sent my parents the invitation months in advance, called to remind them, even offered to pay for their hotel. The morning of the ceremony, my phone rang. My mother's voice apologetic but firm. Honey, we can't make it. Emily has a doctor's appointment this afternoon. Just a checkup, but you know how she gets anxious if we're not both there. I sat in that auditorium watching other families cheer and take photos, and I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't need them there, that I was strong enough to celebrate alone. I've been telling myself that lie for over a decade now. The truth is, I became exactly what they needed me to be. The low-maintenance daughter. The one who never caused problems, never demanded attention, never asked for anything. I learned to be invisible so well that eventually they stopped seeing me at all. I moved to Palm Beach 6 years ago. Built my business from the ground up. I don't talk about money with my family because they never ask. Our conversations when they happen are brief and surface level. How's the weather? How's work? Generic questions that don't require real answers. They don't know what I do not really. They don't know what I've built. And honestly, I've stopped expecting them to care. It's nearly midnight when my phone lights up on my nightstand. I almost don't answer. But it's my mother, and despite everything, some part of me still hopes that maybe this time will be different. Hi, Mum. Lindsay's sweetheart. Her voice is bright, energized in a way that immediately puts me on edge. I'm so glad I caught you. I have wonderful news. Emily's getting married next spring. Isn't that exciting? I wait for her to ask about my life, about me, but she barrels forward. We're going to need your help, honey. You've always been so organised, so practical. There's just so much to coordinate, and you know how Emily gets overwhelmed. The word sticks in my chest. Practical, as if that's all I've ever been, all I'll ever be. Of course, I hear myself say, whatever you need. The words hang in the air after I say them, and I realise with a sinking feeling that I've just agreed to something without even knowing what it entails. But that's always been my role, hasn't it? Say yes, first figure out the details, later. Be helpful, be easy, be practical. Over the next hour, my mother walks me through what she needs. And by what she needs, I mean a comprehensive list of tasks that would require a full-time wedding planner. She wants me to research invitation designers, get quotes from at least 5 florists, compile a list of photographers with availability next spring, and coordinate with the venue about setup times and restrictions. You're so good at this sort of thing, she says, and I can hear her smiling through the phone. So detail-oriented. Emily just gets so stressed with all the logistics. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, expensive Italian marble cool under my forearms, looking out at the moonlight reflecting off my infinity pool. I've spent the last 3 years designing a home that represents everything I've accomplished. Every finish, every fixture, every carefully curated detail is a testament to the life I've built entirely on my own. But my mother doesn't know this house exists. She doesn't know anything about my life. Mum, I try, before we go further, I actually have some news I've been wanting to share. Oh, that's wonderful, honey, but I really need you focused on Emily's wedding right now. You understand, don't you? This is such a big moment for her, for all of us. For all of us. As if Emily's wedding is a collective achievement. As if I'm somehow part of this celebration simply by proximity. Sure, I say quietly. I understand. Your father wants to say hello. Hold on. There's a shuffling sound, and then my father's voice comes through, warm but distracted. Lindsay, sweetheart, your mother told you the good news. She did. Congratulations. We're very excited. Very proud. He pauses, and I can hear him doing something else while talking to me. Probably reading email. Your mother mentioned she's asked for your help with the planning. We really appreciate it. You've always been the practical one in the family. The one we can count on to get things done without any drama. The practical one. I close my eyes. Is that all I am to them? Practical. The daughter who doesn't need emotional support because she's too busy being useful. The one who can be counted on to handle logistics and details because she doesn't have the luxury of falling apart. Dad, I wanted to tell you both. Oh, Lindsay, I'm sorry I've got another call coming in. We'll talk more soon, okay? And thank you, sweetheart. Really, we knew we could count on you. The line goes dead. I sit there in my beautiful kitchen, in my beautiful house, in my beautiful life that my family knows nothing about, and I feel something crack open inside my chest. It's not new, this feeling. It's been there for years, growing quietly in the dark spaces between phone calls and forgotten birthdays and milestones that no one acknowledged. I walk to my home office and pull out an old photo album from the bottom drawer of my desk. I don't look at it often. It hurts too much. But tonight, I need to see it. I need to confirm what I already know. I flip through the pages slowly. Birthday parties, holiday gatherings, family vacations. And there I am, again and again, relegated to the edges. In this one, I'm partially cut off by the frame. In that one, I'm slightly out of focus in the background while Emily beams in the centre. In another, I'm not in the photo at all because I was the one holding the camera. There's a photo from Emily's high school graduation. The whole family dressed up, gathered around her in her cap and gown. I'm visible in the corner, 17 years old, smiling dutifully. I remember that day. I just won a statewide art competition, a scholarship attached. I tried to tell them at dinner, but the conversation kept circling back to Emily's plans for college, Emily's future, Emily's dreams. I turned the page. Emily's college graduation. I'm there again, 21 now, standing at the edge of the group. That same day, I'd gotten my acceptance letter to graduate school with a full ride. Never mentioned it. What was the point? My graduate school graduation photo isn't in this album. Because no one took one. Because no one was there. I close the album and lean back in my chair, a pattern emerging so clearly it almost makes me laugh. Every major milestone I've ever had has coincided with something in Emily's life. My high school graduation overshadowed by Emily's acceptance into a prestigious music program. My first major design award, the same week Emily got engaged to her first boyfriend. That relationship didn't last, but the memory of my achievement being swallowed whole by their excitement certainly did. I only exist in the margins of her story. That's my role. That's all I've ever been allowed to be. The diamond on my left hand catches the light and I look down at it. Daniel proposed 3 months ago. 3 months and I haven't told them. At first, I was waiting for the right moment. Then I was waiting for them to ask about my life. Then I realised they never would, unless I forced the conversation. Tonight feels like the right time. They're in a good mood. They're talking about weddings. Surely this is the perfect opening. I pick up my phone and call my mother back. She answers on the second ring. Mum, I really need to tell you something. It's important. Of course, honey, what is it? I take a breath, looking at my ring, feeling a flutter of hope I should know better than to feel. I'm engaged. Daniel proposed and we're planning. Oh, that's lovely, dear, she says, but her tone is already shifting, distracted. Listen, I'm sorry Emily's calling on the other line and she's probably panicking about something wedding-related. Can we talk about this later? I really need to take this. Mum, Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. You always do. The line goes dead. I sit there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. Then I slowly lower it and look at my engagement ring, at the promise of a future that my family doesn't even know exists. When will it be my turn? I'm still staring at my ring when I hear the front door open. Daniel's back from his evening run, and the sound of his footsteps crossing the marble foyer grounds me in a way nothing else can. He finds me in the office, still holding the photo album, and his expression shifts immediately from relaxed to concerned. What happened? He asks, crossing the room to kneel beside my chair. Daniel Hayes, 42, silver threading through his dark hair eyes that actually see me. Not the version of me my family needs, but the real me. The one who's ambitious and occasionally petty, and who cries at animal shelter commercials but refuses to admit it. We met 2 years ago through a project I never expected would change my life. His nonprofit was renovating a community centre in West Palm Beach, turning it into a safe space for at-risk youth. They needed someone to design the interior on a modest budget, and a mutual acquaintance suggested me. I almost said no. I was busy with high-end residential projects, working with clients who had unlimited budgets and unlimited demands. But something about the project description stuck with me. A space where kids can feel valued, the brief said, where they can feel seen. I took the job. And on the first day, walking through that gutted building with Daniel, he said something I've never forgotten. You see people, don't you? He said, watching me take notes. The way you talk about these spaces, it's not just about aesthetics. You understand that design is about making people feel like they belong. I'd stood there, pencil frozen above my notepad, because no one had ever articulated what I did that way. No one had ever understood that every room I designed was really about creating the feeling I'd spent my whole life searching for. The feeling of being chosen, of mattering. That's exactly what it is, I'd whispered. He smiled. Then you're perfect for this project. 3 months later, he asked me to dinner. 6 months after that, he told me he loved me. And 3 months ago, on the beach behind this house at sunset, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I tried to tell them, I say now, holding up the album, about us, about the engagement. Daniel takes the album from my hands and sets it aside, then pulls me up from the chair and into his arms. He doesn't say anything right away. He's learned that sometimes I need silence more than words. She hung up on me, I finally say against his shoulder. Emily called and Mom just ended the conversation, like what I had to say wasn't important enough to wait 30 seconds. Did you tell her we're engaged? I started to. She said it was lovely and then she was gone. Daniel pulls back enough to look at me and there's something in his expression that's both gentle and fierce. Lindsay, you deserve to be someone's priority, not their afterthought, not their backup plan, their priority. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But you don't feel it. I shake my head. I keep thinking that if I help enough with Emily's wedding, if I'm useful enough, maybe they'll finally see me. Maybe this time will be different. And if it's not, then I'll have wasted more time hoping for something that's never going to happen. I look up at him. Why do I keep doing this to myself? Because they're your family. Because hope is stubborn. Because you're human. He brushes a strand of hair behind my ear. But you don't have to keep accepting crumbs, Lindsay. You're allowed to want the whole meal. I laugh, despite myself. That's a terrible metaphor. It's late, I'm tired. Cut me some slack. He's smiling, but his eyes are serious. Call them back. Right now. Tell them about us, about the wedding we're planning. Tell them you want them there. Give them one clear, undeniable chance to show up for you. And if they don't, then you'll know. And you can stop wondering. He's right. I've spent so much of my life in this awful limbo, never quite giving up hope, but never getting confirmation that things could be different. Maybe it's time to force the issue, to lay it out clearly and see what they do with it. I pick up my phone before I can talk myself out of it. My mother answers almost immediately this time. Lindsay, is everything okay? The question almost makes me laugh. When has she ever called just to check if everything's okay? Mom, I need you to listen to me for a minute. Really listen. I take a breath. I'm engaged. Daniel proposed 3 months ago. We're planning a wedding here in Palm Beach, and I want you and Dad there, both of you. This is important to me. There's a pause. A long one. When she speaks again, her voice has that particular quality I've learned to dread. Pleasant but distant. Polite but not present. That's nice, dear. I'm happy for you. When is it? We're looking at next spring. I'll send you the exact date once we've finalised it. Another pause. Next spring, Lindsay, that's when Emily's wedding is. I know. That's why I'm telling you now, so we can coordinate. Well, I can practically hear her pursing her lips. We'll see if we can make it. It's going to be a very busy time with Emily's planning, and you know how she needs our support, but we'll certainly try. We'll see if we can make it. Not, of course we'll be there. Not, we wouldn't miss it. Not even, let us check our calendars. We'll see if we can make it. Daniel is watching my face, and whatever he sees there makes him reach for my hand. That's nice, dear, my mother continues, already moving on. Now, about Emily's invitations. I was thinking... But I'm not listening anymore. I'm looking at Daniel, at this man who showed up to every gallery opening, every design award ceremony, every moment that mattered, who sees me, who chose me, who made me his priority without me ever having to ask. And I realise something that should have been obvious all along. I've been looking for validation in the wrong place. 3 weeks pass before the other shoe drops. 3 weeks of coordinating Emily's wedding details, of researching florists and venues, of being the practical sister who handles things without complaint. Daniel and I finalise our own date, April 15th, and I send my parents a formal save-the-date card with a handwritten note. Something tangible they can't ignore or forget. I'm in my studio reviewing fabric swatches for a client when my phone rings. Mum. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some stubborn part of me still hopes. Hi, Mum. Lindsay, we need to talk about your wedding date. Her voice has that edge to it, the one that means she's about to ask me to be reasonable, to be understanding, to be the practical one. What about it? Emily just told us she's chosen May 20th for her wedding. That's only 5 weeks after yours. I set down the fabric samples carefully, precisely because my hands are starting to shake. I sent you our date 3 weeks ago. You said you'd mark your calendars. Well, yes, but Emily didn't have her date confirmed yet, and now that she does, we have a problem. What problem? There's a pause, a long one, and in that pause, I already know what's coming. I've known it my entire life. Lindsay, honey, you have to understand. We can't possibly do both weddings so close together. The expense, the travel, the planning. Your father's not getting any younger, and all this stress. You live 2 hours away, Mum. Palm Beach isn't exactly remote. That's not the point. The point is that we have to make a choice, and Emily's wedding is going to be much more involved. She's having 200 guests, and you know how she gets anxious. She needs us there for all the planning, all the preparations. Her wedding needs to be perfect. Her wedding needs to be perfect. Not both weddings are important. Not let's figure out how to make this work. Just a simple declaration that Emily's day matters more than mine. That it always has. That it always will. I set my date first, I hear myself say, and I hate how small my voice sounds. I told you, I sent you a card. I know, dear, and we appreciate that, but you have to be practical about this. Your wedding is going to be small anyway, right? Just a few close friends. Emily's is a major event. The whole family will be there, all her friends from college, her sorority sisters. It's going to be the social event of the season. Practical. There's that word again. Be practical, Lindsay. Be reasonable. Be small. So you're not coming to my wedding. We'll try to make it work, but realistically, you're choosing Emily's wedding over mine. Lindsay, don't be dramatic. We're not choosing anyone over anyone. We're just being realistic about what we can handle. You understand, don't you? You've always been so good at understanding. Something inside me fractures. Not breaks, exactly. More like the final crack in a windshield that's been damaged for years, the one that finally causes the whole thing to shatter. I have to go, I say. Lindsay, wait. I hang up. My phone immediately starts ringing again, but I silence it and set it face down on my desk. For a long moment, I just sit there, staring at nothing, trying to process what just happened. Trying to convince myself it didn't hurt. Trying to pretend I didn't see this coming. But I did see it coming. That's the worst part. I've always known where I stood in their hierarchy. I've just spent 35 years pretending otherwise. My legs give out somewhere between the studio and the kitchen. I don't make a conscious decision to collapse. My body simply stops cooperating, stops holding me up, and I find myself on the floor of my beautiful hallway with my back against the wall and my knees pulled to my chest. And then I cry. Really cry. Not the dignified tears I've shed before, the ones I could wipe away and pretend never happened. These are ugly, wrenching sobs that tear through my chest and leave me gasping. I cry for the little girl sitting in that hospital waiting room, for the teenager who graduated with honours to an empty auditorium, for every birthday card that came a week late, every phone call that got interrupted, every milestone that got swallowed by someone else's story. I cry because I thought if I never asked for anything, they'd finally see me. I thought if I was low maintenance enough, helpful enough, understanding enough, eventually they'd realise what they'd been missing. Eventually, they'd choose me. I was wrong. I don't know how long I sit there in the darkness. The sun sets without me noticing, and the house grows quiet around me. When I finally hear the front door open, I can't even bring myself to move. Lindsay, Daniel's voice echoes through the house. You hear. He finds me in the hallway, still crumpled against the wall, mascara streaked down my face. I watch him take in the scene, the phone discarded, nearby the tissue box I apparently grabbed at some point, the broken look on my face. He doesn't ask what happened, doesn't try to fix it with words, He just slides down the wall next to me, puts his arm around my shoulders and pulls me against his chest. And we sit there together in the darkness while I cry myself empty. Eventually, there are no tears left, just a strange, hollow feeling where hope used to be. Daniel's shirt is wet beneath my cheek and my head is pounding, but something has shifted inside me. Something fundamental. I fall asleep there on the floor, exhausted and wrung out. When I wake up in bed the next morning, Daniel must have carried me. Sunlight is streaming through the windows, and my phone is buzzing with messages I don't want to read. I pick it up and look at the screen. 12 missed calls from my mother, 4 from my father, a long text from Emily about bridesmaid dress options. I open a new message to my mother and type 3 words, "That's okay, Mum." But as I hit send, I catch my reflection in the mirror above my dresser. My eyes look different, harder, clearer. Something in me has finally, irrevocably changed. Daniel leaves early for a board meeting, pressing a kiss to my forehead and a mug of coffee into my hands before he goes. I appreciate that he doesn't hover, doesn't ask if I'm okay. We both know I'm not, but I will be. I spend the morning mechanically going through the motions. Shower, dress, answer a few client emails with the kind of professional efficiency that's kept me in business for a decade. But my mind is elsewhere, cycling through the same thoughts over and over, like a record with a skip. By noon, I'm sitting at my kitchen table with my cold coffee and my silent phone, and I realise I've been staring at the same email for 40 minutes without reading a single word. My mother hasn't called back after my text. Neither has my father. The silence is its own kind of answer. I push the laptop away and walk out to the terrace overlooking the ocean. The April breeze is warm, carrying the salt smell of the sea, and for a long time I just stand there watching the waves roll in with their ancient, indifferent rhythm. The ocean doesn't care about family hierarchies or who gets chosen. It just keeps moving forward, eroding and rebuilding, persistent and patient. Persistent and, maybe that's what I need to learn. As the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, something clicks into place in my mind. A thought that's been circling for hours finally lands with absolute clarity. I've spent 35 years trying to earn a place at their table. 35 years making myself smaller, quieter, more convenient. 35 years hoping that if I just helped enough, sacrificed enough, understood enough, they'd finally see me standing there. But what if I stop trying to earn a seat at their table? What if I just build my own? The thought is so simple, so obvious, that I almost laugh. Why have I been fighting so hard to be included in something that has never wanted me? Why have I been measuring my worth by whether they show up when I have proof all around me that I'm valuable? This house, my business, my reputation, the clients who trust me with their most intimate spaces, Daniel who chose me without hesitation. I don't need their validation. I never did. I just thought I was supposed to want it. I go back inside and open up my laptop, pulling up the wedding planning folder Daniel and I created. The venue is booked, our backyard overlooking the ocean. The caterer is confirmed. The string quartet has our deposit. Everything is ready, everything is beautiful, and it's going to happen whether my parents are there or not. But here's what I decide, standing in my kitchen with the sunset pouring through the windows. I'm going to invite them anyway. Not because I'm hoping they'll come, not because I think it will change anything, but because I want to close this chapter with dignity. I want to be able to look back and know that I did everything right, that I extended every courtesy, that I gave them every opportunity. And when they don't show up, and I know now they won't, it will be their choice, not mine. Their loss, not mine. I spend the next hour putting together an invitation package that's far more generous than they deserve. Formal invitations on heavy cream cardstock, 2 first-class plane tickets from their home to Palm Beach, a reservation at the best hotel on the island oceanfront suite, 3 nights, a handwritten note that says simply, "I hope you can be there. It would mean everything." It's a lie, that last part. It won't mean everything. Not anymore. But It's the kind of gracious lie that lets me walk away with my head high. I'm sealing the envelope when Daniel comes home. He loosens his tie as he walks into the kitchen, sees what I'm doing, and goes very still. You're still inviting them? I am. Lindsay, I know what you're going to say, that they don't deserve it, that I'm setting myself up to be hurt again. I look up at him. But I need to do this. Not for them, for me. He studies my face for a long moment, then nods slowly. Okay, but can I ask you something? Always. What do you want from them now? Really? I consider the question, turning it over in my mind like a piece of sea glass, examining it from every angle. What do I want from my parents? Their approval, their pride, their love. A week ago, even a day ago, the answer would have been yes to all of it. But sitting here now with the invitation in front of me and the sound of the ocean through the open windows, I realise something that feels like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. Nothing, I say, and the word comes out steady and sure. I don't want anything from them anymore, and that's the freest I've ever felt. Daniel crosses the room and cups my face in his hands, studying me with those eyes that have always seen straight through to my core. You mean that? I do. And I'm surprised to find that it's absolutely true. The desperate need for their validation, the aches for their attention, the hope that someday things would be different, it's all gone, burned away by yesterday's tears and replaced with something harder and cleaner. I spent so long thinking I needed them to choose me, but I'm choosing myself. Finally. He kisses me then soft and sweet, and when he pulls back, he's smiling. What do you want to do now? I turn to my laptop, still open to our wedding planning folder, and start clicking through the photos I've saved. The archway where we'll say our vows, woven with white roses, and overlooking the endless blue of the Atlantic. The tables set with simple linens and wildflowers, intimate and warm. The dance floor on the terrace where we'll celebrate with the people who actually love us, who actually show up. And I smile. Not the careful practice smile I've worn around my family for decades. A real smile, the kind that reaches my eyes and makes my cheeks hurt. Look at this, I say to Daniel, turning the screen so he can see. Look at what we've built. He comes around behind my chair and wraps his arms around me, and together we look at the images of our wedding, our home, our life. Everything I've created with my own two hands and my own stubborn heart. This is mine, I whisper, and my voice is full of wonder. All mine. Daniel tightens his arms around me, and I feel him smile against my hair. You know what I love about you? You've built this entire empire, and your family has no idea who you really are. He's right, of course. They don't know. They've never asked the right questions, never looked beyond the surface-level answers I've given them. When they ask what I do, I say interior design, and they picture someone picking out throw pillows for suburban living rooms. They have no idea what my work actually entails. The truth is, I don't do interior design under the name Lindsay Bryant. I haven't for 8 years. When I moved to Palm Beach and started my firm, I made a deliberate choice. I registered the business under my mother's maiden name, L.C. Morgan Interiors. The C is for Catherine, my middle name. It gave me a clean slate, a separation between the forgotten daughter and the professional I was determined to become. No one in my family ever made the connection because none of them ever looked closely enough to try. L.C. Morgan has a reputation in circles my family will never travel. I've designed penthouses in Manhattan, waterfront estates in the Hamptons, a tech billionaire's compound in Big Sur. Architectural Digest has featured my work 4 times. Last year, I was named one of the top 50 designers under 40 by Interior Design magazine. The award sits in my office downtown along with half a dozen others. My client list reads like a who's who of American wealth, but I've built my reputation on something more than just expensive taste. I design spaces that understand the people who live in them. Spaces that make you feel valued, seen worthy of beauty. Every room I create is a love letter to the concept of belonging, probably because I spent so long not feeling it myself. This house, the one Daniel and I share, is my masterpiece. I bought the land 10 years ago when I was 25 and had just landed my first major commission. Everyone told me I was crazy, that I was overextending myself, that a property like this was beyond my reach. I didn't listen. I spent 3 years designing every detail. Another 2 building it, working with contractors who became friends, and making decisions that felt like prayers. When it was finished, I paid the final invoice with money I'd earned entirely on my own. No loans, no help. Just the accumulated result of a decade of 60-hour weeks and ruthless determination. $8 million. That's what it's worth now, according to the appraisers. The house sits on 2 acres of prime oceanfront property, all glass and clean lines, and carefully curated views. 5 bedrooms, each one designed as a retreat. A chef's kitchen that actually gets used. My studio with north-facing windows and walls lined with fabric samples and sketches. The infinity pool that seems to pour directly into the Atlantic. Every single element chosen with intention, with meaning, with love. Daniel didn't know the full scope of it when we first started dating. He knew I was successful, knew I designed high-end interiors, but the numbers didn't come up for months. We were already in love when I finally showed him my portfolio, the real one with the magazine spreads and the celebrity clients and the projects that have shaped skylines in 3 different cities. "Why didn't you tell me?" he'd asked, sitting in my studio flipping through pages of my work with something like awe on his face. "Because I never wanted to be known for my money," I'd said. "I wanted to be known for my work, for what I create, not what I own." He'd understood that immediately. Daniel comes from money himself, old Florida wealth that he spent his adult life trying to channel towards something meaningful. He knows what it's like to wonder if people see you or just see your bank account. It's one of the reasons we fit so well together. But there's another reason I kept it quiet, one I didn't fully acknowledge even to myself until recently. I wanted to see if my family would love me without knowing. I wanted to find out if they'd choose me when they thought I was just the practical daughter with a modest little design business. Nothing special, nothing that demanded their attention. Some part of me hoped that if they loved me when they thought I was ordinary, it would mean something more. Turns out they didn't love me either way. At least now I know it wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was about Emily and their fear of losing her and the story they'd already written where I played a supporting role. I'm glad they don't know, I say now, still looking at the photos of our wedding venue. I'm glad I get to have this one thing that's completely separate from their judgment or their expectations. They're going to find out eventually, Daniel points out gently. The wedding invitations have your address on them. Let them find out. I'm done hiding, but I'm also done performing. If they show up, they'll see what I've built. If they don't, they'll hear about it through the grapevine eventually. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. It feels powerful saying that. Not my problem anymore. For 35 years, their opinion has been my problem, my preoccupation, my constant background anxiety. What will they think? Will they be proud? Will they finally see me in now, sitting here in my beautiful home with my beautiful life spread out around me? I realise I don't actually care what they think. I'm done auditioning for a part I was never going to get. The wedding is 6 weeks away now. The final details are falling into place with the kind of elegant inevitability I usually achieve only with my most carefully designed spaces. 75 guests, all people who actually know us, actually care. The ceremony at sunset dinner under string lights, dancing until the stars come out. Simple, intimate, perfect. 2 days after, I mail the invitation package to my parents. My phone rings with an unknown local number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Lindsay Bryant, a woman's voice, professional and curious. Yes, this is Jessica Chen from Palm Beach Lifestyle magazine. I'm working on a piece about the island's most spectacular private venues, and I've heard you're hosting a wedding at your oceanfront estate. Would you be interested in letting us feature it? My heart starts beating faster. How did you hear about that? A photographer friend mentioned it. Said the property is stunning. She pauses. I did some research. Is it true you're the Elsie Morgan, the designer? And there it is. The moment where my two worlds start to collide. I am, I say carefully. Then I have to ask, Jessica says, and I can hear the smile in her voice. Who is the mysterious bride hosting an elegant wedding at the $8 million Palm Beach estate? I politely decline Jessica Chen's request for an interview. The wedding is private. I explain just family and close friends. She's disappointed but professional, and I think that's the end of it. I'm wrong, of course. In the age of social media and public records, privacy is more aspiration than reality. But for now, I push the call out of my mind and return to the work that actually matters, creating a wedding that reflects who Daniel and I really are. The next morning, I drive to Daniel's mother's house in Coral Gables. Patricia Hayes is 73 sharp as a tack and tends a garden that could make professional landscapers weep with envy. She's been growing flowers for 50 years, and her backyard is a riot of colour and fragrance that changes with the seasons. When I told her I wanted to use her garden flowers for the wedding, she cried and hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. My grandmother used her garden flowers, she'd said, wiping her eyes, and her mother before that. It's not about the money, sweetheart. It's about continuity, about carrying love forward. Now standing among her roses and gardenias and sweet-smelling jasmine, I understand exactly what she meant. These flowers have history. They've witnessed birthdays and graduations, anniversaries, and ordinary Tuesday afternoons. They're rooted in something real. Patricia and I spend the morning cutting stems and talking through arrangements. She suggests white roses for the ceremony, arched jasmine wound through the railings, gardenias floating in low bowls on each table. Nothing elaborate, nothing that screams for attention, just beauty that invites you closer, that rewards attention rather than demanding it. Emily's wedding must be keeping your mother busy, Patricia says as we work, and there's no judgment in her voice, just gentle observation. I'm sure it is. I clip a particularly perfect rose and add it to my basket. She's having 200 guests. And you're having 75? Patricia nods, a small smile playing at her lips. Quality over quantity. Exactly. The truth is, I could have invited 200 people if I'd wanted to. My client list alone would fill a ballroom. But I don't want a ballroom. I don't want strangers in cocktail attire making small talk and checking their phones between courses. I want the people who know me, who've shown up for me, who'll still be in my life 10 years from now. Over the next few weeks, those people prove exactly why they're invited. My best friend Sarah, who I've known since graduate school, takes charge of the rehearsal dinner planning with the kind of military precision that made her a successful event coordinator. Marcus Daniels' college roommate handles the music selection, creating a playlist that somehow captures both of our personalities. Even my assistant Claire gets involved hand addressing invitations in beautiful calligraphy during her lunch breaks because, as she says, this wedding deserves the personal touch. One evening, Sarah and I are sitting on my terrace going over seating charts when she looks up from her tablet and gives me a searching look. Can I say something without you getting defensive? When have I ever gotten defensive? I say, and she laughs. This wedding, she says, gesturing at the plans spread between us. It's like the anti-Emily production, isn't it? I consider this Emily's wedding, from what my mother has told me in her increasingly infrequent phone calls, involves ice sculptures, a 12-piece orchestra, custom cocktails named after the bride and groom, and centerpieces that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Every detail is designed to impress, to overwhelm, to make absolutely certain no one forgets whose day it is. It's not anti-anything, I say finally. It's just us. We're not trying to make a statement, we're just trying to get married. The wedding of quiet grace, Sarah says softly, and something in her tone makes me look up. What? That's what Marcus called it yesterday. He said Daniel's wedding is going to be the wedding of quiet grace. I think he's right. The phrase stays with me. Quiet grace. Yes. That's exactly what I want. Not loud, not showy, just beautiful in a way that doesn't need to announce itself. The following week, I send the final invitation package to my parents. The elegant invitations with their simple calligraphy. The plane tickets upgraded to first class at the last minute, because even now, some part of me wants to do this right. The hotel reservation at the Breakers, their suite overlooking the ocean. A handwritten note that took me an hour to compose, striking the right balance between warmth and dignity. I mail it, knowing they won't come. The acceptance from them never arrives. No phone call, no text, not even an email. Just silence, which is its own kind of answer. It hurts less than I expected. Maybe because I finally stopped expecting anything different. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sarah shows up at my door with her laptop and an expression I can't quite read. "You need to see this," she says, pushing past me into the kitchen. She opens her laptop and turns it toward me. It's an article in Palm Beach Lifestyle magazine, published that morning. The headline reads, "Elegant Mystery Wedding in Palm Beach. Who is this humble heiress?" My stomach drops. There are no photos of my house, thank God, but there are details. Too many details. The oceanfront location, the estimate of the property value, my professional name, Elsie Morgan, connected for the first time in print to Lindsay Bryant, a sidebar listing some of my most famous projects, another sidebar discussing Daniel's philanthropic work, and, at the bottom, a quote from an unnamed source. This is a woman who's designed homes for billionaires but lives with breathtaking modesty. Her wedding reflects her values, intimate, meaningful, and utterly unpretentious. In a world of Instagram excess, it's refreshing. How did they get all this? I breathe. Public records, probably. Your business registration, property records. It's all out there if someone wants to look. Sarah is watching me carefully. Are you okay? I read the article again and something unexpected happens. Instead of anxiety, I feel a strange sense of liberation. For years, I've kept these two parts of my life separate. The successful designer and the forgotten daughter. The accomplished professional and the woman still hoping for her parents' approval. But now the wall between them is crumbling, and I realise I don't actually mind. Let them see. Let everyone see. I'm done hiding. I'm done making myself smaller. I'm done pretending my accomplishments don't matter, because acknowledging them might make someone else uncomfortable. I'm okay. I tell Sarah, and I mean it. I'm actually okay. My phone starts buzzing. Notifications flooding in. The article is being shared, commented on, discussed. By noon, it's everywhere. The mysterious bride isn't mysterious anymore. I don't hear from my parents that day or the next. The silence stretches into a third day, and I find myself checking my phone less and less frequently. Maybe they haven't seen it. Maybe they don't read Palm Beach Lifestyle magazine. Maybe the article hasn't reached their social circle 2 hours north. I'm almost starting to believe they'll never know when my cousin Rachel calls. Rachel is my father's brother's daughter, 10 years younger than me, and we've never been particularly close. She sends Christmas cards with photos of her kids and occasionally likes my very sparse Facebook posts. So when her name lights up my screen on a Thursday afternoon, I know immediately that something has shifted. "Lindsay?" she says when I answer, her voice breathless with excitement. "Oh my God, Lindsay, I had no idea." No idea about what? About you? About any of it? I'm sitting here looking at this article about some fancy Palm Beach wedding, and there's your name, your face, an $8 million house. She laughs, but it's not unkind. "When did you become secretly rich?" "I'm not secretly anything. I just don't talk about it much." "Does Aunt Margaret know? Does Uncle Robert?" And there it is, the question I've been waiting for without realising it. "I don't know," I say honestly. "We haven't spoken since I sent them the wedding invitation." There's a pause. "Lindsay, this article is everywhere. My book club was talking about it this morning. Someone shared it in the neighbourhood Facebook group. If I've seen it, they've definitely seen it." After we hang up, I sit with my coffee and my phone, and I imagine how it must have happened. I imagine my mother scrolling through Facebook or checking her email, seeing a link shared by one of her friends. Maybe the subject line said something catchy. Did you see this Palm Beach wedding? Or stunning oceanfront estate? She would have clicked it out of idle curiosity, the way you do when you're drinking your morning coffee and have a few minutes to kill. The article would have loaded on her screen. That headline, the details about the property, the wedding, the designer named L.C. Morgan. She would have skimmed it, perhaps even started to formulate one of her opinions about wealthy people and their excesses. Maybe she even read it aloud to my father, the way she does with articles that catch her attention. And then she would have reached the photos. The property shots taken from the street, showing just enough of the house to be impressive without being invasive. The professional headshot of me from my company website, the one where I'm smiling in front of a finished project, confident and accomplished. But it's the caption that would have stopped her cold. Interior designer Lindsay Bryant marries philanthropist Daniel Hayes. Lindsay Bryant, her daughter, the practical one, the one who does interior design, the one whose life they've never bothered to ask about in any meaningful detail. I know my mother well enough to know exactly what happened next. The shock, the confusion, the slow, dawning realization that she's been wrong about something fundamental. That the daughter she'd dismissed the wedding, she'd declined to attend, represents something far bigger than she'd imagined. I picture her dropping her phone onto the kitchen table with a clatter. My father looking up from his newspaper asking what's wrong. Her pointing at the screen with a shaking finger, unable to form words. And Emily. God, Emily. My sister would have seen the article too, probably sent to her by one of our mutual cousins or family friends. I can imagine her scrolling through her own wedding planning madness, surrounded by fabric swatches and menu options and seating charts for her 200 guests when her phone pings with a message. Did you see this article about your sister? She would have opened it with mild curiosity, maybe even annoyance. Another interruption, another thing pulling focus from her big day. And then she would have read it. Some people waste money just to feel important. I can almost hear her saying it, her voice dripping with disdain as she scrolls through the article, because that's how Emily processes anything that threatens to overshadow her. She diminishes it, makes it small, turns it into something gauche and desperate. I imagine her reading the details to our mother, over the phone, both of them finding comfort in their shared disapproval. Rich people never have real taste, my mother would agree, because acknowledging that I might have both money and taste would require them to reconsider everything they believe about me. It's easier to mock, easier to dismiss, easier to maintain their narrative where I'm the practical daughter with the modest little life. But then the photos would have loaded. Not just the property shots, but the engagement photo Daniel and I took on the beach last fall. Me, in a simple white dress, barefoot in the sand, laughing at something he said. The ocean behind us, the sunset painting everything gold. It's a beautiful photo because it's genuine, because we're genuinely happy. And beneath it, that caption again. My full name, Daniel's name. The connection between L.C. Morgan Interiors and me, finally publicly made. That's when it would have hit them. Not just that I'm wealthy, but that I've been wealthy. That the success didn't happen overnight. That while they were focused entirely on Emily, I was building something extraordinary. That every time they'd asked how work was going and I'd said fine, I was actually designing multi-million-dollar homes for some of the most discerning clients in the country. That their practical, invisible, low-maintenance daughter had been living a completely different life than the one they'd imagined for her. My phone rings. It's my mother. I let it go to voicemail. It rings again. My father this time. Voicemail. Then, Emily. I decline the call. They try 4 more times before the messages start coming through. Text messages that begin with Lindsay, we need to talk, and please call us back, and deteriorate into why didn't you tell us, and how could you keep this from us? I read them all. I don't respond to any of them. Because what would I say? That I didn't keep it from them? They simply never asked. That I've been Elsie Morgan for 8 years and they never once Googled my name. That I sent them an invitation to this wedding at this house and they couldn't be bothered to come. Rachel texts me again around dinner time. Just FYI, the family group chat is absolutely losing it right now. Aunt Margaret apparently dropped her phone when she saw the article. Your dad hasn't said a word. And Emily, well, someone said she threw her phone across the room. I read the message twice and I feel something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction exactly, not vindication, just a quiet sense of things finally irrevocably shifting into their proper places. They know now. They all know now. And there's no putting that knowledge back in the box. Rachel keeps me updated over the next few days with texts that are equal parts horrified and entertained. My family's neighbourhood, it seems, has become a hotbed of gossip. The kind of small-town talk that happens when someone you thought you knew turns out to be someone completely different. Mrs. Henderson asked your mum point blank at the grocery store if she was going to your wedding. Rachel texts on Friday morning. Said she'd read all about it in that magazine article. Your mum apparently turned bright red and said it was complicated. An hour later. Now, people are sharing the article in the neighbourhood Facebook group. Someone commented they didn't even attend their own daughter's wedding, with 3 shocked face emojis. And then your mum just posted a cryptic status about family privacy and respecting boundaries. The comments are not going well for her. I should feel something about this. Satisfaction, maybe. Vindication. But mostly, I just feel tired. Tired of being the family secret, the convenient daughter, the one whose accomplishments only matter when they become impossible to ignore. My voicemail fills up. 14 messages from my mother, each one progressing through stages of emotion like she's working through grief. The first few are confused. Lindsay. Honey, we saw an article. Can you please call us back? Then hurt. I don't understand why you didn't tell us about any of this. Then defensive. We had no idea you were doing so well. You never mentioned it. And finally angry. It's incredibly hurtful that we had to find out about your life from a magazine. My father leaves 3 messages, all variations on the same theme. Lindsay, we need to talk. Please call. His voice sounds older than I remember. Uncertain. Emily calls once. Just once. I listen to her voicemail twice, fascinated by the barely controlled fury in her voice. Lindsay, what the hell? You let everyone think you were just some regular designer, and now there are articles calling you a humble heiress. That's my wedding date we're talking about, and now everyone is more interested in yours. Call me back. I delete it. Daniel finds me that evening on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of coral and gold. He doesn't say anything, just hands me a glass of wine and sits beside me. Rachel says the family group chat has exploded, I say after a while. Are you reading it? No, but she's giving me highlights. I take a sip of wine. Apparently, I'm the main topic of conversation at every dinner party and book club meeting within a 20-mile radius of my parents' house. How does that feel? I consider this. Strange. For 35 years, I've been invisible to them, and now, suddenly, I'm all they can see, but only because other people are looking. That article has been shared over 50,000 times, Daniel says quietly. A morning show producer called my office asking if we'd be interested in doing an interview about modern philanthropy and conscious luxury. What did you tell them? That our wedding is private, that we're not interested in being anyone's example of anything. He looks at me. But Lindsay, you need to know something. This isn't going away. Your work is too high profile now. People are making the connection between Elsie Morgan and Lindsay Bryant and they're impressed. You're getting interview requests, magazine features. A book publisher wants to know if you'd consider writing about residential design. I don't want any of that. I know, but you can't control the narrative anymore. It's out there. He's right, of course, and maybe that's okay. Maybe it's time to stop controlling the narrative. Stop managing how people see me. Stop trying to be small enough not to threaten anyone. Rachel calls instead of texting on Saturday morning. "You need to hear this," she says without preamble. "I was at my mum's house yesterday and Aunt Margaret stopped by. She looked terrible, Lindsay, like she hasn't slept in days." What did she want? To talk to my mum about you? About how she didn't know, how you never told them how complicated everything is with Emily's wedding? Rachel pauses. "But here's the thing. My mum, your Aunt Janet, she didn't let her off the hook. She said, 'Margaret, when's the last time you asked Lindsay about her life? Not just how's work, but really asked.' And your mum just sat there. She couldn't answer." I close my eyes. What happened then? Aunt Janet said, "That girl has been succeeding quietly for years, and you never noticed because you were too busy worrying about Emily." Your mum started crying, said she didn't mean to neglect you, that Emily needed so much when she was sick that it just became a pattern. A pattern, I repeat, 35 years of a pattern. "There's more," Rachel says. "Your dad has been going through old photo albums. My mum saw him at their house yesterday, just sitting in the living room surrounded by pictures. She said he looked like someone had punched him in the gut. That image stays with me. My father, who's always been so confident, so certain of his choices, confronting evidence of what he'd missed. I imagine him looking at those photos the way I did weeks ago, seeing the pattern of my absence, the way I'm always on the edges, always secondary, always less. When did we lose her, I imagine him thinking. But the truth is, he never had me to lose. You can't lose something you never bothered to hold on to." Rachel sends me a screenshot later that evening. It's from Emily's Instagram, a post about her wedding planning. The caption talks about staying focused on what matters and not letting distractions steal your joy, but the comments are brutal. "Is this about your sister's wedding?" someone asks. "Kind of tacky to shade your sister like this." Another writes, "I just read about your sister's wedding and it sounds beautiful. Why are you being bitter?" The post has been up for 3 hours and already has 200 comments, most of them critical. Emily's carefully curated image as the sweet, beloved younger sister is cracking under the weight of public scrutiny. According to Rachel, Emily's wedding has transformed overnight from the social event of the season into the other sister's wedding. Her friends are asking why she didn't mention that her sister was successful. Her future in-laws are confused about why the families aren't close. Every conversation about her upcoming celebration now includes a reference to mine. It's the kind of overshadowing that Emily has never had to experience before. She's always been the centre of attention, the sun around which our family orbited. And now, suddenly, she's being eclipsed by the sister she'd barely thought about. Rachel's final text of the day is just a screenshot of a message in the family group chat. It's from Emily to her fiancé, but apparently she accidentally sent it to the whole group. "She'll regret stealing my spotlight." I read it 3 times. Not because I'm shocked, but because I'm not. This is who Emily has always been. The difference is that now everyone can see it. Emily calls me directly on Sunday evening. I'm in my studio organising fabric samples when my phone lights up with her name. And for a moment, I consider letting it go to voicemail like all the others. But something tells me this conversation needs to happen. That we've been circling it for weeks, maybe years, and it's time to finally land. "Hello, Emily." "Lindsay." Her voice is bright, almost aggressively cheerful, but I can hear the razor blade underneath. "I've been trying to reach you. We all have." "I've been busy with wedding preparations." "Of course, your wedding." She says it like the words taste bitter. "I saw the article. Very impressive. I had no idea you were doing so well for yourself." "You never asked?" There's a pause and I can almost hear her recalibrating. "Well, I'm calling now to congratulate you. It's wonderful news, really. An $8 million house. Who would have thought, I don't respond. I've learned over the years that silence is often the best response to Emily's passive aggression. Let her fill the void. Let her reveal herself. Must be nice, she continues, and now the mask is starting to slip. Having all that money to throw around, making sure everyone knows exactly how successful you are. That magazine article was quite something. Did you arrange that yourself? I declined to be interviewed, actually. The journalist wrote it without my participation. Oh, come on, Lindsay. The pretense of friendliness is evaporating fast. You expect me to believe that an article just happens to come out right before both our weddings, and it just happens to make you look like some kind of design genius with this incredible mansion. You made sure everyone saw how rich you are. Something inside me goes very still and very cold. I set down the fabric sample I've been holding and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean that's been my constant companion for 6 years. I just stopped hiding who I am, I say quietly. Hiding. Emily's laugh is sharp and ugly. You weren't hiding, you were lying, letting us all think you were just some regular person with a regular job, and meanwhile you're designing houses for billionaires and living in some palace in Palm Beach. I never lied. I told you I was an interior designer. I told you I lived in Palm Beach. You never asked for details. Because normal people don't have details like that. Normal people don't secretly own $8 million properties. I'm not secretly anything, Emily. I'm just private. There's a difference. Private. She spits the word like it's poison. You know what I think? I think you waited. You waited until right before my wedding to make your big reveal. You couldn't stand that I was finally getting my moment, so you had to steal it. I close my eyes. This is so perfectly Emily. Everything is about her. Everything is calculated to hurt or help her specifically. The idea that my life might have nothing to do with her doesn't even enter her mind. Your wedding is 5 weeks after mine, I say, keeping my voice level. My wedding date was set months ago. I sent Mum and Dad a save the date before you even chose your venue. And then you made sure that article came out right when everyone was talking about my wedding. Right when I was supposed to be the centre of attention. Emily, I didn't write that article. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. But you're not exactly upset about it either, are you? You're finally getting the attention you always wanted. Poor little Lindsay, always overlooked, always ignored. Well, congratulations. You've successfully made my wedding about you. The accusation is so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that I almost laugh. Almost. But there's something sad about it too. Sad that my sister is so threatened by my happiness that she has to twist it into an attack on her. Sad that she can't see how she's becoming the villain in her own story. I'm sorry you feel that way. I say, and I mean it. Not sorry for anything I've done, but sorry that she's so consumed by jealousy that she can't feel anything else. Don't, Emily snaps. Don't give me that calm, reasonable voice, like you're so much better than me, like you're above it all. You're not better than me, Lindsay. You're just luckier. Luckier? Now I do laugh, though there's no humour in it. Emily, I built my career from nothing. I worked 80-hour weeks. I took risks. I learned and grew and pushed myself. That's not luck. That's work. You had advantages. What advantages? The parents who missed my college graduation. The family who never asked about my life. The childhood where I was invisible because you needed all the attention. The words come out sharper than I intended, and I hear her sharp intake of breath. That's not fair, she says, but her voice has changed. Less aggressive, more defensive. None of this is fair, Emily, but it's true. And I'm done apologising for succeeding despite it. There's a long silence. I can hear her breathing on the other end of the line, can almost feel her trying to formulate a response that will put her back in control of this conversation. Everyone's talking about you, she finally says, and her voice is small now, hurt. My friends, my in-laws, even my bridesmaids, they all want to know about my sister, the famous designer. Nobody's talking about my wedding anymore. They're talking about yours. And there it is, the real wound. Not that I'm successful, not even that I kept it private, but that for the first time in her life, Emily isn't the most interesting person in the room. I'm sorry people are talking. I say, and I am. Not sorry for my success, but sorry that she's so fragile, that someone else's achievements feel like a personal attack. But, Emily, my life isn't about you. My career isn't about you. My wedding isn't about you. I'm just living my life. Easy for you to say when you're the one everyone's interested in. Is that really what matters to you, being interesting to people? You don't understand. Her voice cracks. You've never understood what it's like to be me. You're right, I don't. Just like you've never understood what it's like to be me. She makes a sound that might be a laugh or might be a sob. I have to go. Emily. But she's already hung up. I stand there for a long moment with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to silence. Then I lower it slowly and look at my reflection in the darkening window. I look tired. But I also look free. Whatever Emily does next, whatever game she decides to play, I'm done participating. I've spent 35 years trying to manage her feelings, trying not to outshine her, trying to make myself smaller so she could feel bigger. I'm not doing it anymore. My wedding happens on a perfect April afternoon, exactly as planned. 75 people who actually know us, actually love us, gathered under a canopy of white roses and jasmine from Patricia's garden. Daniel's eyes fill with tears when he sees me walking down the makeshift aisle between the chairs. I wear my grandmother's pearl earrings and a simple silk dress, and I've never felt more beautiful in my life. My parents' seats remain empty. I notice it for exactly 30 seconds during the ceremony, and then I let it go. They made their choice. I made mine. The month that follows is a blur of happiness. Our honeymoon in Italy, coming home to our beautiful house, settling into married life with an ease that feels like we've been doing this for years. I'm busy with new client projects, Daniel with his foundation work, and the drama with my family fades into background noise until Emily's wedding day arrives. I don't attend, obviously. I wasn't invited. But Rachel is there, and around 9 o'clock that evening, my phone starts buzzing with her increasingly frantic texts. Lindsay, you need to see this. Your mum just gave the most awkward speech. Emily is losing it. She just said something really nasty about you and people are filming. Call me, now. I'm curled up on the couch with Daniel halfway through a movie when I finally check my phone. 17 missed messages from Rachel. 3 from other cousins. Even 1 from my father, which I delete without reading. What's wrong? Daniel asks, seeing my expression. I don't know yet. Rachel answers on the first ring. Oh, thank God. Lindsay, it's bad. Like, really bad. What happened? Your mum gave this toast during dinner. She was talking about Emily and how proud they are, and she said, I'm not kidding, she said, our younger daughter, our pride and joy, just like that, as if you don't exist. I close my eyes. It shouldn't hurt anymore. I've accepted who they are, what they think of me. But hearing it stated so boldly, so publicly, still sends a spike of pain through my chest. There's more, Rachel continues. One of Emily's college friends, she was sitting near me and she asked your mum, what about Lindsay? You must be so proud of both your daughters. And before your mum could answer, Emily jumped in. What did she say? She said, and I quote, oh, Lindsay's too busy counting her millions to care about family. She said it really loudly and there were people filming because you know how weddings are now. Everyone has their phones out. Rachel, I'm sure it's not. Lindsay, it's already online. Someone posted it to TikTok 20 minutes ago. It's got 50,000 views. My stomach drops. Send me the link. The video arrives 30 seconds later. I watch it with Daniel leaning over my shoulder, both of us silent. The video quality is shaky, clearly filmed on someone's phone, but the audio is crystal clear. I can see my mother at the microphone champagne glass, raised her face, glowing with pride as she talks about Emily. "Our younger daughter," she says, "our pride and joy." Then a woman's voice off camera. "What about Lindsay? You must be so proud of both your daughters." The camera swings, catching Emily's face. For just a fraction of a second, I see something calculating flash across her features. Then she smiles, that same bright smile she's perfected over the years, and leans toward the microphone. "Oh, Lindsay's too busy counting her millions to care about family," she says, and there's laughter in her voice like it's a joke. Like we're all in on it together. But her eyes are cold. The camera catches a few reactions. Uncomfortable faces. Someone whispering. Then the video cuts off. "It gets worse," Rachel says. After the official reception ended, I saw Emily on her phone in the bridal suite. She was calling someone, and I heard her say, "I need you to spin this. Make her look like the villain." "Lindsay, I think she's trying to launch some kind of PR campaign against you." I watch the video again, and this time I see what I missed before. The way Emily glances at the phones filming before she speaks. The deliberate pitch of her voice to carry across the room. The calculated nature of that smile. She did this on purpose. She saw cameras, saw an opportunity and took it. "How many views did you say?" I ask. It's up to 200,000 now, and climbing. I open TikTok and search for my name. The video is there along with dozens of others. Reposts, reactions, commentary. The hashtag #ForgottenDaughter that started with my wedding article has new life now, but this time the narrative is different. This time people are taking sides. Some of the comments defend me. Her sister sounds jealous. Maybe there's a reason Lindsay doesn't come around. Why is the mum only proud of one daughter? But others are vicious. Rich people always abandon their families. She probably thinks she's too good for them now. Money changes people. Daniel reads over my shoulder, his jaw tightening. She's trying to control the narrative. Make you the villain before you can tell your side. He's right. I can see it now, the strategy forming. Emily waited until she had a captive audience, until there were cameras running, until people were primed to see her as the sympathetic bride. And then she launched her attack, framing me as the cold, money-obsessed sister who abandoned her loving family. My phone buzzes with a new text. This one from a number I don't recognise. "Hi Lindsay, this is Jessica Chen from Palm Beach Lifestyle. I'm seeing some concerning videos circulating about you and your family. Would you like to comment?" Another buzz, another journalist, then another. Emily's campaign is working. I think about calling her, demanding an explanation, asking her why. But I already know why, because I finally stepped out of her shadow, and she can't stand it, because for the first time in our lives, people are more interested in me than in her, because she'd rather destroy me than share the spotlight. Rachel texts one more time. "Lindsay, I heard her on the phone. She said, 'By the time I'm done, no one will remember her mansion. They'll only remember she abandoned us.'" I set my phone down carefully, precisely on the coffee table. Daniel takes my hand. "What do you want to do?" he asks. I look at him, this man who sees me, who chose me, who knows exactly who I am. And I realise something important. Emily can spin whatever story she wants. She can paint me as the villain, the abandoner, the money-obsessed sister who forgot where she came from. She can try to tear down everything I've built, but she can't change the truth. And the truth has a way of coming out. I want to tell my story, I say, the real one, all of it. By morning, the video has 2 million views. The hashtag #ForgottenDaughter is trending on 3 different platforms, and my name is being discussed by people who've never met me, never seen my work, never heard my side of anything. I wake up to hundreds of notifications, my phone buzzing like an angry hornet against the nightstand. Daniel is already up, standing at the window with his coffee, his face tight with concern. "You should see what they're saying," he says quietly. "I don't want to look, but I have to. The comments have multiplied overnight and they're getting worse. Someone has created a thread on Twitter claiming I'm a gold digger who married Daniel for his money. Never mind that I have more money than he does, that I bought this house before we even met. The narrative doesn't care about facts." Another account posts a photo of Emily as a child in a hospital bed, tubes and monitors visible. The caption reads, "While her sister was fighting for her life, Lindsay was planning her escape from the family. Some people have no heart." I stare at that photo, at my sister's pale face, and my parents' worried expressions in the background, and I feel sick. Not because it's a lie, exactly. Emily was sick. My parents were worried. But the framing is deliberately cruel, designed to make me look heartless for the crime of growing up and building a life. "There's more," Daniel says, and his voice has an edge I rarely hear. He hands me his laptop. Someone has compiled a series of old family photos, carefully curated to tell a specific story. Emily's graduations, birthdays, achievements, always with our parents beaming beside her. And then photos of me always slightly out of frame, always in the background with captions like, "The sister who was never there," and "Even in family photos she kept her distance." The implication is clear. I was the one who withdrew. I was the one who chose distance, not them. "This is coordinated," Daniel says. "These aren't just random people sharing opinions. Look at the accounts." He's right. Many of the most vicious comments come from accounts created in the last 24 hours. Generic usernames. No profile pictures, all posting similar messages with similar timing. Someone is running a campaign flooding the conversation with a specific narrative before I have a chance to respond. My email inbox is worse. Dozens of messages from strangers, some concerned, most angry. "How could you abandon your family? Money can't buy class. Your poor parents must be heartbroken." And then I see the ones that make my blood run cold. Threatening messages. "You deserve to lose everything. Someone should teach you a lesson. We know where you live." Daniel sees me reading them and immediately takes the laptop away. "That's it. We're calling the police. It's just internet trolls. They always make threats. Lindsay, some of these have your actual address. This isn't random." His voice is tight. "This is getting dangerous." He's right, and I know it. But there's something else in those emails buried among the threats. A pattern. Several of them use the exact same phrases. "Abandoned her sick sister." "Too good for her family now." "Money changed her." It's like they're all reading from the same script, because they are. Rachel calls at noon, her voice shaking. "Lindsay, I have to tell you something. I was at the hair salon this morning and I overheard 2 women talking about you. They were saying terrible things, stuff that's not even true. And when I corrected them, they showed me their phones. There are accounts spreading rumours everywhere. Someone is saying you stole money from your parents. Another claims Daniel's divorcing you already. It's all lies, but people are believing it." "Who's behind it?" "I don't know for sure, but..." She hesitates. "Emily's fiancé works in marketing. He has connections to social media agencies, the kind that do reputation management. Of course, Emily didn't just make one comment at her wedding and hope it would stick. She planned this, hired professionals, launched a coordinated attack designed to destroy my reputation before I could defend myself. I should be angry. I should be plotting my counterattack. But mostly, I just feel exhausted. How do you fight someone who's willing to lie, to manipulate, to hire strangers to spread poison about you? How do you defend yourself against accusations that sound plausible enough that people want to believe them? The answer comes from an unexpected source. 3 days into the storm, Daniel shows me a new article. It's written by someone named Marcus Richardson, who apparently runs a popular platform about family dynamics and healthy relationships. His bio says he has 2 million followers, most of them women over 40. The headline reads, "The Real Story of the Forgotten Daughter, What Everyone Got Wrong." He reached out to me, Daniel said he wanted to investigate before writing anything. So I gave him contact information for some of your clients, your employees, people who actually know you. I start reading. Marcus Richardson has done what no one else bothered to do actual research. He tracked down 3 of my former clients who spoke glowingly about my work, my professionalism, my genuine care for creating spaces where people feel valued. He found my assistant Claire, who told him about the time I spent an entire weekend helping her find emergency housing when her apartment flooded. He interviewed contractors I've worked with, vendors, even the woman who manages the community centre. Daniel and I designed together. Every single person described the same thing: kindness, humility, integrity. Someone who tips generously and remembers names. Someone who works harder than anyone else in the room, but never demands recognition for it. Then Marcus did something brilliant. He pulled public records showing I bought my house 3 years before I met Daniel, paid for entirely with documented income from my design firm. He found my business registration from 8 years ago, proving LC Morgan Interiors existed long before my wedding, long before any of this drama. He even found my college transcripts showing I graduated with honours while working 2 jobs. The article doesn't attack Emily directly. Instead, it asks questions. Why does a successful woman's accomplishments get framed as abandonment? Why do we assume someone who achieves must have done so at someone else's expense? And why are we so quick to believe a narrative that fits our prejudices rather than investigating the truth? The comments on his article are different from the ones I've been seeing. People apologising for jumping to conclusions. People sharing their own stories of being the overlooked child in their family. People recognising the coordinated nature of the attack against me. He's got 2 million followers, Daniel says quietly. And he just told them all that you're the real victim here. I look up from the article, and for the first time in 3 days, I feel like I can breathe. The narrative is shifting. Marcus Richardson reaches out the next morning, offering me a chance to tell my story in full, without interruption or editing. 1 interview, he writes. That's all you need. I agree with one condition. I'll only speak once. After this, I'm done. We meet at my house 3 days later. Sitting on my terrace overlooking the ocean, I present my evidence calmly, methodically. Business registration from 8 years ago. Tax returns proving every dollar earned through my design work. Property records showing I purchased this land at 25 and built the house entirely with documented income. Text messages with my parents, the engagement announcement, they barely acknowledged the save the date, sent months before Emily chose her date, the first class plane tickets, and hotel reservation I sent them. And my mother's response that Emily's wedding was the family priority. So the claim that you abandoned your family, Marcus asks, I invited them to be part of my life. They chose not to come. When he asks about Emily's comment at her wedding, I choose my words carefully. My sister almost died when she was 8. My parents were terrified, and rightfully so. But somewhere in that process, everything became about Emily. I learned to need nothing to be invisible. I don't blame them for being scared, but I don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. Then Marcus asks the question that matters. What would you say to everyone watching? I look directly at the camera. I spent 35 years trying to earn my family's love, trying to be helpful enough, quiet enough, understanding enough that they'd finally choose me. But love that has to be earned isn't really love. It's performance. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's just absent. And that's okay. I found my own way. My voice strengthens. I used to want their approval more than anything. Then I realised something that changed everything. I don't need permission to matter. My worth isn't determined by whether they recognise it. It's inherent. It's mine. To everyone who's ever been the forgotten child, the overlooked sibling, you matter. You always mattered. You just needed people capable of seeing it. And if your family can't, that's their limitation, not your flaw. The interview explodes. 5 million views in 24 hours. The hashtag forgotten daughter transforms into a movement. But with the visibility comes an avalanche of messages, thousands of strangers sharing their stories of being invisible in their own families. I read them compulsively late into the night, unable to stop. Daniel finds me at 3 a.m, still at my computer, tears streaming down my face. "You need to talk to someone," he says gently. "A professional. You can't carry everyone's pain." Dr. Sarah Chen's office is quiet, comfortable, safe. After I explain everything, the interview, the messages, the overwhelm, she asks a simple question that stops my heart. "What did you want from them, your parents?" I can't answer at first. I've spent 35 years wanting without ever naming it clearly. "I wanted them to see me," I finally whisper, "to choose me, just once. I wanted to matter without having to beg for it. And when that didn't happen, I thought it was my fault, that if I could just be more helpful, less needy, they'd finally notice me." My voice breaks. I spent my whole life trying to be worthy of their love. Dr. Chen leans forward. "Listen to what you just said. You spent your life trying to be worthy of love, as if your inherent worth wasn't enough." The realization hits me like a wave. I spent 35 years trying to earn something I already had. My worth. It was always there. They just couldn't see it, and I made their blindness about me instead of about them. "Yes," she says gently, "and that's what so many people do. They internalize the rejection. They assume it must be about their value rather than about the other person's capacity." I sit with this truth, feeling it settle into empty places I didn't know existed. All those years of contorting myself, and the whole time my worth was inherent. It didn't need to be proven. It simply was. When I leave her office, I feel lighter. That evening, I open my laptop and choose one message from thousands. A woman named Jennifer, 47, the capable daughter, who was never enough. I type, "Dear Jennifer, thank you for trusting me with your story. You don't have to earn love. You just have to know you're worthy of it. Your worth isn't determined by whether someone else can see it. It's inherent. It's yours. You are already enough. You always were. With understanding, Lindsay." I hit send. It's just words on a screen. But maybe that's enough. Maybe telling someone they matter is exactly what's needed. My phone rings. My father's number. I answer. "Lindsay," his voice breaks on my name. "Please, we need to see you." I tell him they can come on Saturday afternoon, 2:00. I give him the address and hang up before he can say anything else. My hands are trembling as I set the phone down and Daniel appears in the doorway, his expression concerned but not surprised. He heard everything. "Are you ready for this?" he asks. "No, but I don't think I'll ever be ready, so it might as well be now." The next 3 days pass in a strange fog. I go through the motions of work, of daily life, but part of me is already preparing for Saturday. I'm not the girl who sat in hospital waiting rooms anymore. I'm not the teenager who graduated alone. I'm not even the woman who sent those plane tickets hoping they'd come to her wedding. I'm someone different now. Someone who knows her worth doesn't depend on their acknowledgement of it. But knowing that intellectually and feeling it when they're standing in front of me are two very different things. Saturday arrives with perfect weather, as if even the universe is setting a stage. Daniel asks if I want him there, and I almost say yes, before realizing this is something I need to do alone. He kisses my forehead and disappears to his study close enough if I need him, but giving me space to handle this my way. At exactly 2:00, the doorbell rings. I open the door to find my parents standing on my front step, and the sight of them stops me cold. They look smaller than I remember, older. My father's hair has gone completely grey, and my mother's face has lines I don't recall seeing before. They're dressed carefully, formally, like they're going to church or a job interview, like they're trying to make a good impression. "Lindsay," my mother breathes, and her eyes are already filling with tears. "Come in," I say, stepping back to let them enter. They walk into my home, and I watch their faces as they take it in. The soaring ceilings and wall of windows overlooking the ocean. The carefully chosen artwork, each piece meaningful, rather than merely expensive. The furniture I designed specifically for these spaces, comfortable and elegant without being ostentatious. Fresh flowers from Patricia's garden on the console table, their scent subtle and welcoming. Everything speaks to who I am, what I value, how I've chosen to live my life. This isn't a showpiece. It's a home. My home. My mother's hand goes to her mouth. "Lindsay, it's beautiful." "Thank you." I lead them to the living room, gesturing to the couch. "Please, sit." They sit together, close holding hands like they need each other's support. I take the chair across from them, maintaining distance, and I see my father notice the deliberate space between us. We're in my world now. My rules, my boundaries. "Lindsay, I don't even know where to start." My mother begins the words tumbling out. "We're so sorry. We had no idea. We never meant to hurt you. We just were so focused on Emily because she was sick, and we were terrified of losing her, and we know now that we lost you instead, not literally, but emotionally, and we've been terrible parents to you, and I'm so sorry. Mum, stop." My voice is quiet but firm, and she stops mid-sentence looking startled. "I appreciate that you want to apologise, but I need you to do something first. I need you to understand what you did. Not just that you hurt me, but how and why it matters." She nods, tears spilling down her cheeks. My father sits very still, his jaw tight. "I don't need you to explain about Emily being sick," I continue. "I understand that. I was there. I remember the fear, the hospital stays, the uncertainty. I'm not angry that you loved her or that you took care of her. I'm angry that somehow in the process of loving her, you decided I didn't need to be loved." "That's not true," my father says, his voice rough. "We always loved you." "Did you?" The question hangs in the air between us. Because love isn't just a feeling, Dad. It's action. It's showing up. It's paying attention. It's choosing someone again and again. And you never chose me. Not once. "Lindsay," my mother starts. "Let me finish. Please." I take a breath, steadying myself. "I needed you at my college graduation. You weren't there. I needed you when I started my business, when I bought my first property, when I won my first design award. You weren't there for any of it. I needed you at my engagement, at my wedding. You weren't there. And every single time the reason was the same. Emily needed you more." "She did need us," my father says weakly. "For a doctor's appointment, for wedding cake tastings, for every single moment of her adult life." I shake my head. "No, Dad, she didn't need you more. You just found it easier to focus on her because she demanded attention and I didn't. Because she fell apart when you weren't there, and I learned to handle everything alone. I made it easy for you to forget me, and you took that opportunity every single time." The silence that follows is thick, heavy, with 35 years of absence. My mother is crying openly now, and my father looks like he's aged another decade in the last 5 minutes. I should feel victorious. I should feel vindicated. Instead, I just feel tired. "I spent my entire life trying to earn a place at your table," I say quietly, "trying to be worthy of your attention. And I want you to understand something before we go any further. I'm done trying. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need you to validate my choices or celebrate my achievements. I've built a beautiful life without you, and I'm proud of it. If you want to be part of my life now, it has to be because you genuinely want to know me, not because you feel guilty, or because everyone else is talking about what terrible parents you've been." "We do want to know you," my mother says, her voice breaking. "Lindsay, we do. We've been blind and selfish and..." A voice from behind me cuts through the moment like a knife. "Hello, sister." I turn and there's Emily standing in the doorway to the terrace. She must have come around the side of the house through the garden gate I'd forgotten to lock. She's wearing white of all things, like she's trying to look innocent or bridal or something equally calculated. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. "Emily," my father says, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see my sister," she says sweetly, walking into the room like she belongs here. "We have so much to talk about, don't we, Lindsay?" I stand slowly, every muscle in my body tensing. Emily wasn't invited. My parents look as surprised as I feel, which means this wasn't coordinated with them. She came on her own, uninvited to my home. And from the determined set of her jaw, she came with a purpose. "Emily, this isn't a good time," I say evenly. "Oh, but it's the perfect time. The whole family together." She gestures behind her and I notice for the first time that she's not alone. A woman I don't recognise stands near the terrace entrance, holding what looks like a professional camera. "I brought my friend Melissa. She's a photographer. I thought we could document this moment, the family reconciliation, show everyone that we're moving forward together." The pieces click into place immediately. This isn't about reconciliation. This is about image control. Emily's reputation has taken a beating since my interview went viral, and she needs proof that she is not the villain everyone thinks she is. She wants photos of us together, smiling, hugging, looking like a happy family. Content she can post with captions about forgiveness and family bonds carefully crafted to rehabilitate her public image. "No cameras," I say firmly. "Melissa, I'm sorry, but you need to leave. This is a private conversation." "But Lindsay?" Emily says, her voice taking on that wheedling tone I remember from childhood. "Don't you think people deserve to see that we're okay, that families can work through their problems?" "What I think is that you showed up uninvited to my home with a photographer, and that tells me everything I need to know about why you're really here." I look at Melissa. "I'm asking you to leave, now, or I'll call security." Melissa glances nervously between Emily and me, then apparently decides I'm the more intimidating presence. "I'll wait in the car," she mumbles, backing toward the terrace. "Melissa, no, don't," Emily starts, but the photographer is already gone. Emily's carefully constructed plan is crumbling, and I can see panic flashing across her face. She needs to salvage this somehow. "Fine," she says, turning back to me with a bright, brittle smile. "No photos, but Lindsay, we really do need to talk, as a family." She pulls a folder from her oversized purse and sets it on the coffee table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since your interview about how we can move forward, how we can make sure this family stays together." My mother reaches for the folder, but I'm faster. I pick it up and flip it open, scanning the documents inside. It's a legal agreement of some kind, dense with text and official-looking letterhead. The title at the top reads, "Family Financial Support Agreement." What is this? I ask, though I'm already reading through it, my blood running colder with each paragraph. "It's just something I had drawn up," Emily says, and her voice has shifted. Less sweet now, more businesslike. "A way to formalise our family's financial arrangements going forward. So there's no confusion." I keep reading. The document essentially states that I agree to provide ongoing financial support to my parents and to Emily. Monthly payments, medical expenses, emergency funds, all of it vague enough to be interpreted broadly, but specific enough to be legally binding. "You want me to sign a contract agreeing to give you money?" I say flatly. "It's not like that," Emily protests. "It's about family taking care of family. You have so much, Lindsay, more than you could ever need. And Mum and Dad are getting older. They're going to need help. We all are." She sits down next to her mother, her expression shifting to something that might look like concern if you didn't know her. "Actually, that's part of why I wanted to talk to you today. Mum hasn't been feeling well lately. Have you... Mum?" My mother looks confused. "I feel fine, Emily." "Mum, don't try to be brave." Emily says, squeezing her hand. You told me about the chest pains, about what the doctor said. She turns to me, her eyes wide and earnest. She needs surgery, Lindsay. Heart surgery. It's going to cost around $500,000, and insurance won't cover all of it. I look at my mother, whose confusion has deepened into alarm. What? Emily, I never said. The doctor said it's urgent. Emily continues, talking over her. And I know you're probably still angry with us, Lindsay, and I understand that. But this is Mum's life we're talking about. If you won't help at least sign this agreement so that later when something happens, no one can say you weren't given the chance. No one can blame you. The manipulation is so blatant, so calculated that I almost laugh. She's trying to use our mother's fictional illness to guilt me into signing a document that would legally obligate me to support them financially. And when I inevitably refuse to make those payments, she'd sue me for breach of contract. This isn't about family. This is a con. Emily, I say quietly, dangerously. What doctor? What hospital? When was this diagnosis? She blinks, momentarily thrown. I don't remember the exact name, because it didn't happen. I turn to my mother. Mum, when's the last time you saw a doctor? My annual checkup in March, she says slowly, watching Emily with growing alarm. They said everything was fine. My heart is perfectly healthy. Or, Emily, my father says, his voice hard, what's going on here? But Emily's not looking at them anymore. She's looking at me, and the mask has finally fallen away completely. What's underneath is ugly, desperate, calculating. You're going to regret this, she says, standing abruptly. I came here trying to help, trying to keep this family together, and you're going to throw it all away because of your pride. You came here to scam me, I say, my voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. You fabricated an illness, tried to use our mother's health as leverage, and attempted to trick me into signing a legal document that would give you access to my money. That's not family, Emily. That's fraud. You think you're so perfect now, she hisses, with your mansion and your viral interview and everyone thinking you're some kind of hero. But you're just selfish. You always have been. Get out of my house. Emily, Marie. My father says, standing now too, his face flushed with anger I've never seen directed at her before. What have you done? But Emily's already grabbing her purse, her movements jerky with rage. This isn't over, she says, pointing at me. You'll see. Everyone will see who you really are. She storms out through the terrace, and we hear her yelling at Melissa in the garden. A car door slams. An engine starts. Then silence. My parents sit frozen on the couch, looking shell-shocked. My mother's hands are shaking. Lindsay, she whispers. I swear, I never told her I was sick. I don't know why she would say that. I believe her. I can see the genuine confusion and horror on both their faces. But I need to be sure. I pull out my phone and dial my parents' home number, putting it on speaker. It rings 3 times before someone picks up. Hello? It's my mother's voice, clear and cheerful, coming from the landline at their house. But my mother is sitting right here in front of me, staring at the phone in my hand with wide eyes. No, not my mother. The person who answered is someone else, but the voice is identical. Then I realise it's the answering machine playing an old greeting. I hang up and immediately call their cell phone. My mother pulls her phone from her purse and we both watch it ring. She answers. Hello, she says, looking at me in bewilderment. Mum, do you feel okay? Any chest pains? Any health problems at all? No, honey, I feel fine. I feel completely fine. I end the call. The 3 of us sit in silence for a long moment. Emily just tried to scam me. I say aloud, the reality of it settling in. She made up an illness and tried to trick me into signing a financial contract. My father's face has gone pale. Oh my God, Lindsay, we didn't know. We would never. I know. I say, cutting him off, because I do know. Whatever their failures as parents, they're not con artists. That's all, Emily. My sister just showed me exactly who she really is. and I'm done pretending otherwise. After Emily leaves, I spend another hour with my parents. The conversation is difficult, painful, necessary. They apologise again, but this time I let them finish. They tell me about the years they spent consumed by fear of losing Emily, how that fear calcified into habit, how they never meant to make me invisible, but did it anyway. My father cries, which I've never seen before. My mother holds my hand and tells me she's proud of me, and I realise it's the first time I've ever heard those words from her. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but it's a beginning. They leave as the sun starts to set, promising to call, to do better, to try. I believe they mean it. Whether they can actually follow through remains to be seen. Daniel finds me on the terrace afterwards, staring at the ocean. He doesn't ask how it went. He just sits beside me and takes my hand, and we watch the waves until the stars come out. I think that's the end of it. I think Emily's failed scheme was her last desperate play, and now we can all move forward separately, if necessary. I'm wrong. The legal envelope arrives by courier on Tuesday morning. Official, intimidating, with a return address from a law firm I've never heard of. I sign for it with a sense of foreboding that proves justified the moment I open it. It's a summons. Emily is suing me for elder neglect and financial abandonment. The complaint alleges that I have willfully refused to provide support to my aging parents, despite having substantial means to do so, that I have cut off all contact with my family, that I have shown callous disregard for their well-being. She's asking for the court to compel me to provide monthly financial support, retroactive payments for the past 5 years, and damages for emotional distress. I read it twice, 3 times each reading, making me angrier. This is Emily's backup plan. When she couldn't trick me into signing her fake agreement, she found a lawyer sleazy enough to file a frivolous lawsuit, hoping I'd settle just to make it go away. She's betting that I won't want the publicity, that I'll pay her off to avoid dragging my parents through court proceedings. She's betting wrong. For the first time in this entire mess, I'm not hurt. I'm not sad. I'm furious, righteously, cleanly angry in a way that clarifies rather than clouds. Emily has crossed a line from family dysfunction into actual legal harassment, and I'm done being patient. I call Daniel at his office. I need a referral for the best litigation attorney in South Florida. What happened? Emily's suing me for elder neglect. She's claiming I abandoned our parents and demanding the court force me to give her money. The silence on the other end of the line is profound. Then, I'll have 3 names for you within the hour. The attorney I choose is named Rebecca Martinez. She's in her 50s, has a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in court, and after reviewing Emily's complaint, she looks at me with something like pity. "This is textbook extortion," she says bluntly. "Your sister hired a lawyer who's been disciplined twice by the Bar Association for filing frivolous suits. They're hoping you'll settle rather than fight." I'm not settling. Good. Because we can get this dismissed, but we'll need documentation. Everything you have showing your relationship with your parents, your attempts to include them in your life, evidence that they're not actually being neglected. She pauses. It would also help if we knew why your sister is really doing this. Financial desperation usually drives this kind of action, which is how I end up hiring a private investigator. Thomas Brennan is recommended by Rebecca. He's a former FBI agent who now does corporate and private investigations. When I meet him at his office in downtown West Palm Beach, he's exactly what I expected. Methodical, professional, and completely unimpressed by family drama. "You want to know about your sister's finances?" he says, making notes. "What exactly are you looking for?" "The truth. Why she's suddenly so desperate for money that she'd try to scam me and then sue me." I think about the fake agreement, the fabricated illness, the lawsuit. This isn't normal sibling rivalry. This is desperation. I want to know why. "Give me a week." He calls me in 5 days. "You should come to my office," he says. "This is the kind of thing you'll want to see in person." When I arrive, he has a folder an inch thick spread across his conference table. Bank statements obtained through legal channels, credit reports, court records, social media analysis. The story they tell is both predictable and shocking. Emily is drowning in debt. She's maxed out 6 credit cards with a combined balance of over $200,000. She took out a personal loan last year for $75,000 that she's already defaulting on. Her wedding cost $300,000, most of it financed, and she's behind on those payments too. The house she and her husband bought is mortgaged beyond its value, and they're 3 months behind. She's been living well above her means for years, Thomas explains. Based on these statements, she was spending as if she had your income. Designer clothes, expensive trips, the kind of lifestyle that looks good on Instagram, but can't be sustained on what she and her husband actually earn. Her husband, I say. Does he know about all this? Thomas slides another document across the table. Divorce filing, submitted 2 weeks ago. Grounds include financial dishonesty and fraud. Apparently, she'd been hiding the credit card debt from him, opening accounts in both their names without his knowledge, when he found out he left. I stare at the papers, piecing it together. Emily didn't just want to compete with me. She tried to live like me, spending money she didn't have to maintain an illusion of wealth and success. And now it's all collapsing, and she's desperate enough to try anything to keep from going under completely. There's more, Thomas says quietly. I found evidence she's been shopping your story to tabloids, trying to sell an exclusive about the real Lindsay Bryant to whoever will pay. So far, no one's biting, but she's trying to monetize your relationship any way she can. I sit back in my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of Emily's desperation. This isn't just about jealousy anymore. This is about survival. She's backed herself into a corner financially, and she sees me as the only way out. When I get home, Daniel is waiting. He takes one look at my face and asks, "What did you find out?" I tell him everything. The debt, the divorce, the attempts to sell stories about me. When I finish, he's quiet for a long moment. "What will you do with this information?" he finally asks. I think about Rebecca ready to file motions that would expose all of this in court. I think about how easy it would be to leak this to the same media outlets that covered my interview. I think about how thoroughly I could destroy what's left of Emily's reputation. "Nothing," I say. "Nothing. I'll give it to Rebecca so she can get the lawsuit dismissed. But beyond that, nothing. I'm not going to use this against her publicly. I'm not going to humiliate her the way she tried to humiliate me." I look at Daniel. Emily's already burying herself. I don't need to help. I just need to step back and let her face the consequences of her own choices. That's generous, considering what she's put you through. It's not generous. It's self-preservation. I take his hand. If I use this to destroy her, I become the villain in her story forever. And I'm done being a character in Emily's narrative. I'm done letting her actions dictate mine. Let her lawyer figure out she has no case. Let her creditors deal with her debt. Let her face the life she created for herself. I'm walking away. And if she comes after you again, then Rebecca will handle it. But I think once her lawyer sees the evidence we have, this lawsuit disappears fast. I lean against him, exhausted. Emily made her choices. Now she gets to live with them, and ye get to live with mine. Rebecca files the motion to dismiss Emily's lawsuit 3 days later, armed with documentation that makes the case look exactly like what it is: extortion. She's confident it'll be thrown out within a month. I choose to believe her and try to return to normal life. I'm in my home office, organising old files, when I find a metal lockbox I don't remember putting in my desk drawer. The key is taped to the bottom. Inside are documents from years ago: birth certificate, social security card, old tax returns. And underneath everything, a manila envelope with my name in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. My grandmother died when I was 23. I remember her funeral, Remember sitting in the back because Emily was having a panic attack and needed our parents. I opened the envelope. Bank statements old and yellowed. First National Bank. My name listed as beneficiary. My father as custodian until I turned 18. The opening balance dated the month I was born is $50,000, an education fund. My grandmother had set it up specifically for me. The statements show regular deposits over the years. By age 10, the balance was over $150,000. By 15, $200,000. I keep flipping through statements, watching the balance grow, imagining the future my grandmother envisioned. College fully paid for. Maybe graduate school. A cushion to start my business. This was supposed to be my foundation. The last statement shows $212,000. The next statement shows zero. Withdrawn in full by custodian. My father's signature on the withdrawal slip, dated 1 week after Emily's 16th birthday. 1 week after her third surgery, the experimental procedure insurance had denied as investigational. I stare at that zero balance, feeling something crack open inside me. There are more documents. Letters from the bank to my father asking him to confirm the withdrawal, reminding him the funds were designated for my education. His written response about the medical emergency, his intention to repay the account before I turned 18. He never did. By the time I turned 18, the account had been closed for 2 years. I was working double shifts at a restaurant to save for college applications. Writing scholarship essays because I'd been told there was no college fund. And all that time, $200,000 that my grandmother had saved for me was gone, spent on Emily without anyone telling me it existed. I remember my father helping me fill out financial aid forms, his handwriting declaring no educational savings, no accounts in my name. He lied. He sat there helping me beg for aid when he'd taken and spent my grandmother's gift. I worked my way through college thinking that was my only option. Took on debt for graduate school. Started my business with nothing because I believed I had nothing. They took it without asking, without telling me, without ever intending to pay it back. I drive to my parents' house without calling first. My mother answers the door, surprised but pleased. "Lindsay, honey, what a nice surprise. Where's Dad?" Something in my voice stops her. Study. "Lindsay, what's wrong?" I walk past her to my father's home office. He looks up with a smile that dies when he sees my face. "Did you think I'd never find out?" I set the bank statements on his desk, watching the colour drain from his face. My grandmother left me $200,000 for my education, for my future, and you took it, all of it, for Emily. Lindsay, let me explain. You took my future to save hers. I say, my voice shaking, and you never told me. You let me work 2 jobs through college. You let me take on debt. You watched me struggle to start my business with nothing, and you never once mentioned I was supposed to have had help, that Grandma had provided for me, that you'd taken it. My mother appears in the doorway, hand over her mouth. "Robert, you said you'd tell her. You promised you'd pay it back." "I tried," he says weakly. "I meant to, but the bills kept coming and Emily needed more procedures and there was never enough. You thought what? That I wouldn't need it, that I'd be fine because I was always fine." I'm crying now. "You didn't just forget me, Dad. You stole what was meant to be mine and gave it to her. And then you let me believe I was starting from zero like everyone else, when the truth is you'd already taken everything I was supposed to have." "We were going to tell you," my mother says, tears streaming. "We were waiting for the right time." There were 1,000 right times when I was applying to colleges, when I was working myself sick to pay tuition. Any of those times would have been right. I shake my head. "But you never told me, because then you'd have to admit what you'd done. You'd have to face that you didn't just overlook me. You erased me. You took my inheritance and my future and you let me build everything from nothing when I never should have had to."
Tak siya day
My father is crying now too, but I can't find it in myself to care. You didn't just forget me, I say, my voice breaking. You took my future to save hers without even telling me. I walk out, leaving the statements on his desk like an accusation. I finally understand why I've always felt like I was climbing a mountain everyone else got to skip. Because I was. And they let me. I make it to my car before the full weight of it hits me. I sit in the driveway with my hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to turn the key, unable to drive away. $200,000. My grandmother's love converted to money intended to give me choices and security and a foundation. Gone. Spent on Emily without a word to me. Without acknowledgement. Without apology. My phone rings. It's my father. I let it go to voicemail. It rings again. My mother this time. I silence it. But I can't leave. Not yet. Because leaving feels like letting them off easy, like walking away means accepting what they did. And I'm not ready to accept it. I'm not ready to carry this alone. I get out of the car and walk back to the house. The door is unlocked. I hear voices coming from the kitchen, low and urgent. My parents talking in the frantic tones of people trying to figure out how to fix something that's been broken for decades. When I walk in, they both turn to me, and the relief on their faces is almost painful to see. Like they're grateful I came back. Like they thought I might disappear forever. Sit down, I say, and my voice comes out steadier than I feel. Both of you. We're going to talk about this. Really talk. Not apologise and move on. Not explain it away. We're going to sit here and face what you did. They sit at the kitchen table, the same table where I ate breakfast before school, where I did homework while they helped Emily with hers, where I learned to make myself small and unobtrusive. I remain standing. I need the height. I need to not feel like a child in this moment. Tell me about the decision, I say. When you took the money, walk me through it. My father looks like he's aged a decade in the last hour. His hands shake as he folds them on the table. Emily's doctor said she needed the surgery immediately, that without it, she might not make it to her 18th birthday. His voice breaks. Insurance denied it, called it experimental. We appealed 3 times. They said no every time. So you took my money. I took the money that was in my name, he says, and I see him realize how that sounds. No, that's not right. It was your money, held in my name. Your grandmother made that very clear in her letters to me. She trusted me to protect it for you. And you didn't. I didn't. He drops his head into his hands. The doctors said we had 2 weeks to decide. 2 weeks to come up with $200,000 or watch our daughter die. And I thought you were 17. You had time. I could take the money, save Emily's life, and then I'd work extra shifts, take out loans, whatever it took to pay it back before you turned 18. Before you needed it. But you didn't pay it back. I tried. His voice is muffled by his hands. God, Lindsay, I tried. But after the surgery came the recovery, the medications, the complications, more procedures that insurance wouldn't cover. Every month there was another bill, another crisis. And I kept thinking next month, next year, when things stabilise, I'll start paying it back. And you never told me. How could I? He looks up now, and there are tears streaming down his face. I've never seen my father cry. Not at his own mother's funeral. Not when Emily was diagnosed. Not ever. How could I tell you that I'd taken your inheritance to save your sister? That every dollar your grandmother saved for you was gone? You were already working so hard, already taking on so much. I thought telling you would just hurt you more. So you let me think there was never anything there at all. You let me believe I had to start from zero. Yes, the word comes out broken. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. My mother reaches across the table and takes his hand, but she's looking at me. When Emily was sick, the doctors told us she might not survive. And I made a bargain with God, with the universe, with whatever was listening. I said if she lived, I'd give her everything, every bit of love and attention and protection I had. She's crying now too. I thought I was saving her life by loving her that much. But what I didn't see was that in the process of keeping her alive, I was losing you in a completely different way. You made a choice, I say quietly. Every day for 18 years you chose her, and I understand why. I do. She was sick and scared and needed you, but I needed you too, and you decided my needs didn't matter as much as hers. We thought you were strong, my father says. We thought you could handle anything. You never complained, never asked for help, never caused problems. We thought that meant you were okay. I wasn't okay. I was invisible. There's a difference. My mother stands up, crosses to me. Lindsay, please. We know we failed you. We know we stole from you, and not just the money. We stole your childhood, your right to be cared for, your place in this family, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to give you back what we took. You can't, I say, and my voice breaks. That's the thing you need to understand. You can't fix this. The money is gone. The childhood is gone. All those years of working myself to exhaustion, of thinking I wasn't worth your time, of believing I had to earn love instead of just receiving it, those are gone too. You can't give any of that back. Then what do we do? My father asks, and he sounds helpless, lost. You face it. You sit with what you did, and you feel it. You don't get to apologize and move on. You don't get to explain it away by saying Emily was sick. You made choices, deliberate choices. You chose to take my money. You chose not to tell me. You chose again and again to prioritize her over me, and you need to own that. We do, my mother whispers. We own it. No, I say, not yet, because you're still trying to fix it. You're still trying to make it better so you can feel less guilty. But I need time. Time to figure out if I even want to forgive you. Time to understand whether forgiving you would be for my healing or just to make you feel better. My father looks stricken. You might not forgive us. I might not. And you need to be okay with that. You need to accept that the consequences of your choices might be permanent. I take a shaky breath. I need time, not to punish you, but to know, am I forgiving you for me, or because I'm still trying to earn your love? Because I've spent 35 years trying to earn what should have been freely given, and I won't make that mistake again, not even with forgiveness. The silence that follows is heavy with everything unsaid, everything that can't be fixed. I turn to leave my legs shaky, my heart pounding. As I walk down the hallway toward the front door, I see movement in my peripheral vision. Someone standing in the shadow of the living room doorway. Emily. She's in her car clothes purse, still on her shoulder keys in her hand. She must have just arrived. And from the stricken look on her face, the tears streaming silently down her cheeks, she heard everything. Our eyes meet for one long, loaded moment. Then I walk past her and out the door. Emily doesn't contact me for 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, no attempts to show up uninvited. The silence is both relief and tension, like waiting for a storm that might never come. Rebecca gets Emily's lawsuit dismissed with prejudice, the judge calling it frivolous and potentially malicious. Emily doesn't appeal. I focus on healing. Dr. Chen and I work through the layers of betrayal, the trust fund revelation adding new dimensions to old wounds. Daniel is patient, giving me space when I need it and presence when I don't. My parents call every few days, leaving voicemails that I'm not ready to return. I'm learning that taking time isn't punishment, it's self-preservation. Then Emily posts a video. It appears on her Instagram one Tuesday morning, and Rachel texts me the link with a simple message: "You need to see this." The video is raw in a way I've never seen from Emily. No makeup, no careful lighting, just her, sitting in what looks like a nearly empty apartment, eyes red from crying. She talks for 7 minutes straight about everything. About being the sick child who got all the attention. About growing up believing she deserved special treatment because she'd survived. About spending money she didn't have trying to compete with me. About the lawsuit, the scam attempt to the lies. I've been the villain in my sister's story. She says, her voice breaking, because I chose to be, not because I was sick, not because our parents favoured me, but because when I finally had to share the spotlight, I couldn't handle it. I tried to tear her down instead of building myself up. And I'm sorry. To Lindsay, to everyone who believed my lies, I'm sorry. The video goes viral within hours. The comments are overwhelmingly supportive. People praising her courage for admitting fault, calling it growth, calling it redemption. The narrative shifts again this time toward family healing and sister reconciliation. Rachel calls, "Do you think she means it?" "I don't know." I say honestly, and you don't. The video could be genuine remorse, or it could be image rehabilitation after everything else failed. I'm too tired to figure out which. 3 weeks later, Emily gets a job. She posts about it on social media, an internship at a small architectural firm in Fort Lauderdale, entry-level position. The post is humble, almost self-deprecating. Starting from the bottom, learning what real work looks like. Thank you to Morrison & Associates for taking a chance on me. My industry is small enough that word travels. I hear from a colleague who knows someone at Morrison's. "Your sister's working there. Apparently she's doing well. Showing up early, staying late, asking good questions." I want to be cynical, but part of me hopes it's real. That Emily is actually trying to change, to build something of her own, instead of tearing down what I've built. 2 months pass. Emily posts occasional updates about her work, always humble, always focused on learning. She doesn't tag me, doesn't try to use our relationship for attention. The distance feels respectful, healthy even. Then she calls. "Lindsay," she says when I answer, her voice tentative. "I know I don't have any right to ask you for anything, but I'm trying to learn this industry for real, and I was wondering, could I shadow you for a week, just to see how a successful firm operates? I'll stay out of your way. I just want to learn." Every instinct screams no. But Dr. Chen and I have been working on distinguishing between healthy boundaries and walls built from old wounds. And despite everything Emily is trying, the job is real. The humility seems genuine. Maybe this is what her redemption looks like. 1 week, I say finally. "You come to the office, you observe, you don't touch anything confidential. And Emily, if you do anything to betray this trust, we're done. Permanently." "I understand. Thank you, Lindsay. Really?" She shows up Monday morning, dressed professionally, carrying a notebook, and wearing an expression of genuine eagerness I haven't seen since we were children. I introduce her to my team as my sister, here to learn. Claire, my assistant, gives me a questioning look, but I nod. It's fine. The week proceeds normally. Emily sits in on client meetings, takes notes during design reviews, asks thoughtful questions about process and workflow. She's professional with my staff, respectful of boundaries, genuinely interested in learning. I watch her carefully, looking for signs of the manipulation I've learned to expect, but I don't see them. She photographs sketches and material samples, but always asking permission first. "Is it okay if I take a picture of this for reference?" I say yes because they're just concept sketches, nothing proprietary. She sits in my office reviewing client files I've left out, but I catch her and she immediately apologizes, steps back, respects the boundary. By Friday, I'm cautiously optimistic. Maybe people can change. Maybe Emily is genuinely trying to become someone different. Thank you. she says as she's leaving Friday afternoon. This week meant everything to me. You didn't have to give me this chance. Everyone deserves a chance to grow, I say, and I almost mean it. The weekend passes peacefully. Daniel and I have dinner with Patricia, work in the garden, enjoy the quiet. I feel lighter than I have in months, like maybe the worst is finally behind us. Monday morning, Claire appears in my office doorway, her face pale. Lindsay, we have a problem. What kind of problem? 3 of our biggest clients just forwarded me emails they received over the weekend. Cold contacts from a firm I've never heard of, offering design services at reduced rates. She hands me her tablet. The proposals they attach look very familiar. I scroll through the documents, my blood running cold. These aren't just similar to our proposals, they're nearly identical. The same conceptual approaches we discussed in meetings Emily attended, the same material palettes from boards she photographed, the same spatial solutions from sketches she'd seen in my office. What firm sent these? I ask, though I already know. It's new, just registered last week. Claire's voice is tight. EB Design Studios. The principal is listed as Emily Bryant. I sit back in my chair, staring at the stolen concepts on the screen, and something inside me finally irrevocably hardens. She didn't come to learn. She came to steal. I spend the next hour going through everything methodically, documenting the theft with the precision I bring to all my work. Claire pulls up our files from the past 6 months, organising them chronologically. Every concept Emily saw, every sketch she photographed, every client discussion she sat in on. We create a timeline, a paper trail, irrefutable evidence of what she had access to and when. The 3 clients who received her proposals are all active projects, but it's the 4th email that makes my hands shake with rage. The Riverside Resort project, $5 million, my biggest contract of the year. A luxury wellness retreat that I've been developing concepts for over the past 8 months. Emily wasn't supposed to know about it, the client values discretion, and we've kept it completely confidential, except Emily saw the file. I remember now. Thursday afternoon, I'd stepped out to take a call from Daniel, and when I came back, Emily was standing near my desk. She'd apologised, said she was just looking for a pen. I'd thought nothing of it. She'd been photographing the Riverside file. Claire pulls up Emily's proposal to Riverside sent yesterday. It's my work. Not similar, not inspired by. My exact conceptual approach, my spatial diagrams, my material specifications, even my preliminary renderings. She stripped my name off and replaced it with hers, but everything else is identical. She's pitching them tomorrow, Claire says, her voice tight with anger. According to the email, she has a meeting scheduled with the owners at 2:00. I look at the clock. It's 9 a.m. I have 5 hours. My first instinct is to call Emily to confront her to demand she cancel the meeting. My second instinct is to call the client directly to warn them to expose her. But both of those approaches put me in the position of reacting to her theft, of scrambling to protect what's mine. I'm done reacting to Emily. Claire, pull up the Riverside file. Everything, every concept sketch, every development document, every email with the client. I need all of it organised chronologically with timestamps. She works quickly, efficiently, pulling together 8 months of documented work. Initial client consultation in March. Conceptual development through spring and summer. Design refinement in fall. Everything dated, everything signed, everything provably mine. I draft an email to the Riverside owners. My hands are steady now, my mind clear. Emily taught me something valuable over these past months. The best counterattack isn't loud, it's precise. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Chen, I write, I understand you may be meeting with Emily Bryant today regarding design services for your Riverside Resort project. Emily is my sister, and she recently spent a week shadowing me at my firm to learn about the industry. I encouraged this because I believed she was genuinely interested in growth and change. I wanted to give you advance notice that Emily may present concepts that look familiar to you. If so, I'd like you to compare anything she shows you with the attached files my original development work for Riverside created over the past 8 months. All documents are time-stamped and signed. I include this information not to create conflict, but to ensure you have complete transparency about the origin of any designs presented to you. Whatever you decide to do with this information is entirely your choice. I simply believe you deserve to know the full context. Best regards, Lindsay Bryant, LC Morgan Interiors. I attach everything. The initial consultation notes from March with my signature and the client's. The conceptual sketches from April with development dates embedded in the file properties. The email chain showing months of back and forth refinement. The preliminary renderings created just last month. 8 months of work, all documented, all dated, all undeniably mine. I hit send at 10:30. At 11:15, my phone rings. It's Robert Chen. Ms. Bryant, thank you for your email. My wife and I have reviewed the materials you sent. His voice is formal controlled. We'd like you to know that we've cancelled this afternoon's meeting with your sister. We've also contacted our attorney about the attempted theft of intellectual property. Mr. Chen, I appreciate you taking the time to review everything. I know this puts you in an awkward position. On the contrary, you've saved us from making a costly mistake. The designs your sister sent us yesterday are exceptional because they're yours. We knew something felt off about the timeline she claimed. 8 months of development work doesn't happen in 2 weeks, no matter how talented someone is. He pauses. The contract is yours, Ms. Bryant. It was always going to be yours. We were simply waiting to finalise the budget. Consider this our verbal commitment. The formal contract will be in your inbox by end of day. Thank you. I'm honoured by your trust. There's one more thing. My wife and I sit on the board of the Coastal Design Consortium. We'll be sharing this information with the other members. Your sister won't be stealing from anyone else in this industry. We'll make sure of it. After we hang up, I sit quietly in my office, looking out at the ocean. I don't feel victorious. I feel tired. Tired of Emily's schemes. Tired of giving her chances only to watch her betray them. Tired of hoping she'll change. Claire appears in my doorway. Emily just called. She wants to talk to you. Says it's urgent. Tell her I'll meet her at her apartment. Give me the address. 40 minutes later, I'm standing outside a modest apartment complex in Fort Lauderdale. Emily answers the door in business clothes, clearly dressed for her cancelled meeting. Her face crumbles when she sees me. Lindsay, I can explain. No, I say, walking past her into the small living room. You can't. There's no explanation that makes this okay. You asked to shadow me. I trusted you, and you used that trust to steal from me. I was desperate. The divorce, the debt I needed, you needed to change. That's what you needed. But instead, you did exactly what you've always done. You tried to take what's mine instead of building something of your own. I'm sorry, she says, and she's crying now. Lindsay, I'm so sorry. I know I keep saying that. I know it doesn't mean anything anymore, but I am. I don't know how to be anything other than this. I don't know how to not be the person who takes from you. Then, figure it out, I say, and my voice is steel. But not on my time. Not with my trust. Not anymore. Please, don't give up on me. You're my sister. I was your sister when you attacked me at your wedding. I was your sister when you tried to scam me with that fake agreement. I was your sister when you sued me. And I was your sister when you stole from me last week. I look at her directly, making sure she hears every word. But you've never treated me like a sister. You've treated me like an obstacle, like competition, like something to be used or destroyed depending on what served you better. That's not true. It is true. And the saddest part is that I gave you one more chance. After everything, I gave you one more chance to prove you could change. And you chose to steal from me instead. I move toward the door. We're done, Emily. Not angry, not hurt, just done. I won't help you anymore. I won't trust you anymore. And I won't keep hoping you'll become someone you're clearly not willing to be. Lindsay, wait! But I'm already walking out down the stairs to my car. Behind me, I hear her calling my name, but I don't turn around. I've spent 35 years turning around for Emily, waiting for her, making excuses for her, hoping she'd change. I'm done waiting. I'm done hoping. I'm finally completely done. When I said those words to Emily, something inside me closed quietly like a door sealing shut. There was no satisfaction in it, no vindictive triumph, only a kind of stillness that comes after a long storm finally spends itself. Weeks have passed since then. My company has recovered from the chaos Emily caused. My projects are steady again and the house feels peaceful. But peace can be deceptive. Silence doesn't mean healing. Daniel says I've been distant lately. He's right. On the surface, everything looks resolved. Emily exposed my parents remorseful, my career thriving, but I still feel something heavy lodged beneath my ribs. Something that keeps me from breathing fully. It arrives one afternoon in an envelope postmarked from my parents' address. I almost throw it away, expecting another awkward apology card or a plea for reconciliation. But the handwriting stops me. It's my mother's neat and careful, like she wrote it slowly, afraid the words might betray her. I open it at the kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the marble. The first line makes my hands tremble. I know I've lost the right to ask you to read this, but I hope you will. She writes about the years after Emily's diagnosis, the fear, the endless appointments, the way every good day felt like a reprieve from disaster. She admits that somewhere along the way she started believing that love was a finite resource, that protecting one child meant neglecting the other. I told myself you were strong, she writes. I told myself you didn't need us, but the truth is, I needed to believe that so I could live with what I was doing. I can almost hear her voice in the looping script trembling between guilt and defense. There were nights I saw you standing in the hallway trying not to cry because you didn't want to wake anyone. I wanted to go to you, I really did. But I was afraid that if I turned my attention away from Emily for even a second, something terrible would happen. So I failed you both. I gave her everything and left you with nothing. I paused there, pressing my fingertips to the page. For so long, I imagined my parents as oblivious, unaware of what they'd done. But she had seen me. She had seen and chosen not to act. That hurts in a way I didn't think anything still could. The letter continues. You were always my pride, Lindsay. I just didn't know how to show it without taking from her. And by the time I realised what I'd done, it felt too late. I know you don't owe me forgiveness, but if you can find it in your heart someday, I'll be waiting. The signature is shaky, almost childlike. I fold the pages carefully, slide them back into the envelope and sit there for a long time staring at nothing. The part of me that wanted her acknowledgement should feel satisfied. She saw me finally. She admitted it. But instead of relief, I feel a deep ache for the years that letter can't give back, the birthdays, the graduations, the ordinary afternoons that could have been something else if she'd just walked down the hallway that night. When Daniel comes home, I show him the letter. He reads it silently, then looks at me with quiet sympathy. What are you going to do? I don't answer. Because I don't know. That night I can't sleep. I keep hearing the sentence. You were always my pride. It's supposed to be comforting, but it feels like an epitaph. The next morning, I take the letter to my therapist. It's our third session since the chaos with Emily ended, and I've mostly been talking about boundaries, about learning to live without waiting for validation. Today, I just hand her the envelope and say, I don't know what to feel. She reads it slowly, then looks at me over the edge of her glasses. What did you want her to say? I don't know. Maybe something that would make it make sense. Something that would fix it. And does this letter fix it? No. But it's the first time she's tried. My therapist nods thoughtfully. It's a beginning, not an ending. Sometimes closure isn't clean. Sometimes it's just understanding what can't be changed. I stare at the window behind her at the slice of sky framed by the blinds. How do I move on from it? She leans forward. What would you tell your 10-year-old self if she walked into this room right now? The question hits me harder than I expect. I picture her instantly, the little girl with messy hair clutching her sketchbook, waiting in a hospital hallway while everyone rushes past her. The girl who kept believing that if she stayed quiet and patient, someone would come back for her. I don't answer right away. My throat tightens. I'd tell her she deserved more than what she got. I whisper, that she wasn't invisible. Maybe you should tell her that, my therapist says gently. Write to her. Say what you needed to hear back then. I nod, though I'm not sure I can. Writing has always been part of how I process my work design, concepts, project notes, but I've never written to myself. That night, after Daniel goes to bed, I sit in my office with the soft hum of the ocean outside and open a blank document. The cursor blinks, waiting. I start typing. Dear little Lindsay. I pause, hands trembling slightly. You won't believe this, but we made it. We grew up and we built a life that's safe, beautiful, and ours. I wish I could reach back through time and hold you when you thought no one noticed. I wish I could tell you that being forgotten doesn't make you forgettable. You mattered then, even when no one said it out loud. You still matter now. I take a deep breath and keep going. I know you think being strong means being quiet. That's what you learned from watching everyone take up space while you tried not to need anything. But strength isn't silence. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors you choose when to open. Loving people doesn't mean letting them hurt you. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself that makes them comfortable. The words come faster now, the sentences pulling something raw and honest out of me. Forgiveness is not a gift for them. It's freedom for you. You can forgive without reopening the wound. You can love without returning to the place that broke you. And your value doesn't depend on who stays or who claps. It's in the work you do, the kindness you give, the way you keep showing up for yourself. My eyes sting, but I keep typing. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's becoming someone you're proud to be. You'll build things with your own two hands that no one can take away. You'll meet people who see you exactly as you are. You'll stop trying to earn love and you'll realize you were worthy of it all along. I sit back, tears blurring the words on the screen. For the first time, I feel something like release. The ache in my chest eases. I scroll to the bottom and type the final line. I'm so proud of us. When I print the letter, the paper feels warm in my hands. I slip it into the old photo album I once used to measure my invisibility and place it beside a picture of 10-year-old me standing in the corner, half out of frame, smiling politely. I touch the photo lightly as if I could reach through it. I wish someone had told me this sooner, I whisper, but I'm telling others now. Those words have stayed with me like a quiet promise. Weeks have passed since that night in my office, the letter to my younger self now resting inside an old album on the shelf. Every time I walk past it, I feel something lighter in me, as if that little girl in the photo has finally been seen. Life has steadied. The noise around my name has faded and the company is thriving again. Clients trust me more than ever, and the story that wants to find me, the forgotten daughter, has turned into something else, something that belongs to the women who write to me saying my journey gave them courage to stand taller. I thought that might be enough, but change has a way of asking for more. It begins with a call from a real estate conglomerate in New York, one of those massive corporations that buys boutique firms and folds them into their empire. They've been following my work for years, the executive says, and they want to make an offer. $50 million, full acquisition, complete creative freedom until I decide to retire. The number makes me laugh out loud, not because it's funny, but because of how far I've come from the girl who couldn't afford rent during her first year in Palm Beach. $50 million could buy peace of mind for the rest of my life. It could buy time, quiet, security. I could close my office, spend mornings on the beach with Daniel, travel whenever we pleased. When I tell him that night over dinner, he smiles, half proud, half teasing. "You've proven everything, Lindsay. You can rest now." I know he means it as love, not temptation. But the word rest doesn't sit right. It sounds like stopping, like endings, and I'm not done yet. That night after he's asleep, I sit in my home office, the same one where I wrote that letter to my younger self, and open the offer again. 50 million. I study the zeros, the neat legal language, the clauses that promise legacy through ownership transfer. But as I read, I realise that if I sign this, my name, L.C. Morgan, will belong to someone else. My team, the people who built this with me, will become numbers on a spreadsheet. The company would live on, but it wouldn't breathe the same. It would stop being a space of belonging and become just another asset. I close the document. The next morning, I call a meeting with my leadership team. There are 10 of us sitting around the long oak table in my studio, people who've been with me since the early years, when our office was barely more than a rented loft with broken air conditioning. I tell them about the offer, about what it means, and that I'm not taking it. For a moment, the room is silent. Then Sarah, my operations director, says softly, "You could retire today." Why not? I look around the table. Because I didn't build this to cash out. I built it to create something that lasts. And legacy isn't a number. It's people. That evening, Daniel finds me reviewing financial reports, highlighter marks scattered across the pages. So he says, leaning against the doorframe, "You said no, I did. But I think I know what I want instead." I explain my plan slowly, the way I design a space measured, intentional, practical, but rooted in meaning. I want to restructure the company. 50% stays with me to keep creative control and protect our vision. 30% will go to the long-term employees who've carried this company on their backs since the beginning. The last 20% will form something new. The Forgotten Daughters Fund, a scholarship and mentorship initiative for women who remind me of who I was. At 22, talented, overlooked, and waiting for someone to see them. Daniel listens quietly, then smiles in that way he does when he knows I've already made up my mind. You always find a way to turn pain into purpose. It's not about redemption, I say. It's about balance. For every girl who wasn't chosen, I want her to know she can choose herself. Over the next few weeks, I work with my legal team to draft the restructuring plan. The lawyers warn me it's unconventional that most business owners wait until retirement to hand over equity. But that's exactly the point. I don't want to wait until the end of my career to share what I've built. I want to do it now, while it still matters, while I can still guide it. When the paperwork is done, I gather the team again. There's disbelief in their faces when they realise what I'm giving them. Some cry quietly, others just stare at the documents in stunned silence. I tell them this company was never meant to be a monument to me. It's a living space built by all of us, and they deserve to own part of it. That night, I sit on the terrace with Daniel, watching the waves dissolve into the horizon. For the first time, I feel something that isn't ambition, or anger, or even healing. It's peace, but an active kind, a calm that comes from knowing I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. A week later, I receive an update from a friend who mentions that Emily has been working quietly as an intern at a small architecture firm in Tampa. No scandals, no headlines, just starting over. It surprises me how that news doesn't sting. I only feel a distant, cautious kind of hope. She's earning something real this time. The next morning, as I review the final documents for the scholarship fund, I find myself thinking about her, about how we both came from the same house, but learned opposite lessons about worth. I think about that little girl I used to be, the one I wrote to, and how many versions of her are still out there working late, doubting themselves, waiting for permission to matter. That's who this fund is for. The Forgotten Daughters Fund launches quietly at first, a single announcement on our website, a press release outlining the mission to support women overlooked by circumstance, but rich in potential. Applications pour in faster than I expect. Letters from single mothers, from students who aged out of foster care, from women rebuilding their lives after loss. Each story is a mirror. Each one feels like a piece of me. Late one evening, as I'm finalising the selection criteria, I draft an email I've been thinking about for weeks. It takes me 3 tries to get the wording right. Subject when you're ready. Emily, I heard you've been working at a small firm. I think that's good. Real work changes people. I want to tell you about something I've started, the Forgotten Daughters Fund. It's meant to help women find their footing again, to rebuild with dignity. There's a position that will open soon, Fund Director. It's a leadership role, but it requires someone who's proven they can do the work first. I pause, staring at the blinking cursor, then add the part that matters most. When you're ready, and I mean truly ready, there's a position here. But you have to earn it, like I did. I read it twice before hitting send, knowing she might not reply for a long time, maybe ever. But that's not the point. The point is offering a door, not an open one, not yet, but one she can unlock herself. As I close my laptop, I look toward the ocean through the glass doors. The tide is coming in steady and unstoppable. For the first time in years, I'm not chasing anything. I'm building something that can outlive me. Those words felt true the moment I sent the email to Emily, but I didn't realise then how much that choice would shape what came next. Months have passed since the launch of the Forgotten Daughters Fund. What started as an idea written in the quiet of my office has grown into something real, a movement I can see, touch and feel breathing around me. The fund's first cohort has just been selected, 10 young women between 18 and 25, each one carrying a story that feels like an echo of mine. Some were overlooked by parents who favoured another child, some were dismissed by teachers or partners, and one grew up in foster care believing her voice didn't matter. When I read their applications, I saw pieces of myself scattered across their words, the same longing to be seen, the same quiet resilience underneath the pain. Our foundation office is small, but warm, filled with light and the faint scent of gardenias from Daniel's mother's garden. We've turned one of my old studio spaces into a mentorship centre with walls lined with artwork and architectural sketches from women who've come before them. On the morning of the first orientation, I stand at the entrance watching the girls arrive. They move nervously, clutching notebooks, whispering to one another. I remember that feeling walking into a room where you're supposed to belong, but still wondering if you do. I start the session with a simple sentence. This fund isn't charity. It's recognition. That breaks the tension. I see shoulders relax, eyes lift. I tell them that this place exists so they can stop apologising for being themselves. As the day unfolds, they share pieces of their stories. One talks about working 3 jobs to pay for art school after her parents called her dream a waste of time. Another describes raising her younger siblings while her mother disappeared for months at a time. By the time the last one finishes, my throat feels tight. Their voices overlap, forming something like a collective heartbeat. In them, I hear what I once couldn't say. Later that week, we hold a small press event. I hadn't planned to make it public so soon, but word spread quickly. Reporters gather in the courtyard, cameras catching the sunlight glinting off the building's glass facade. I stand beside the new sign, the Forgotten Daughters Fund, founded by Lindsay Hayes. The attention feels different this time. It isn't about wealth or revenge. It's about purpose. A journalist from a national magazine pulls me aside after the interviews. She's young, probably not much older than the girls in our cohort, and her eyes are bright with curiosity. If you could tell your younger self one thing, she asks, what would it be? I pause, the answer forming slowly. I'd tell her that being unseen doesn't mean being unworthy, that sometimes the people who overlook you are teaching you how to stand on your own. She nods, jotting it down, but I can tell she feels it too. The article goes viral within days. Suddenly, the fund is receiving donations, invitations to collaborate letters from women all over the country. But what matters most to me isn't the attention. It's the 10 young women who gather in our meeting room every Thursday, finding their voices together. A month later, Emily walks into that same room. She's thinner, quieter, her hair tied back in a simple bun. She's kept her word, completing 6 months at the small firm before reaching out. When she applied formally for the director position, I hesitated, not because I didn't believe she could change, but because I needed to see who she'd become without my shadow. Today, as I introduce her to the team, I catch a glimpse of something new in her humility. During the session, she doesn't speak much. She listens, takes notes, nods when the girls talk about rejection and rebuilding. When the meeting ends, she lingers behind and says softly, "You built something beautiful." I smile. We built it. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but it's something close. Weeks pass. The fund grows stronger, the girls more confident. One afternoon, we gather for what I call the circle, a monthly check-in where everyone shares progress and fears. The air buzzes with quiet energy as they take turns speaking. Some have already started internships through our partner programs. Others are launching small community projects. When it's my turn, I tell them how proud I am, not in the way adults usually say it to sound superior, but as someone who knows exactly how hard it is to believe in yourself after years of being told not to. Then one of them, a girl named Harper, raises her hand. "Can I ask you something personal?" she says. I nod. "How did you stop needing their approval?" The room stills. For a moment, I don't know how to answer. Then, I speak honestly. I didn't stop overnight. I just got tired of waiting for them to see me. So I started seeing myself. I stopped believing love was something you earn, it's something you already deserve. And when I finally believed that, I became free. They're silent, absorbing the words like sunlight. Another girl, this one named Clara, leans forward. "But don't you still want them to say sorry?" I smile, not with bitterness, but understanding. They did. And it was nice. But you know what was nicer? Not needing it anymore. A murmur of laughter ripples through the group, gentle and knowing. I look around the room at 10 faces that mirror the same pain and strength I once carried alone. There's a strange beauty in seeing your scars reflected in others and realizing they've healed differently, but still glow under the same light. When the session ends, none of them rush to leave. Instead, they stand and walk toward me. Harper speaks first. "You didn't just save us," she says quietly, voice trembling with emotion. "You showed us how to save ourselves." The others nod, and before I can say anything, they start clapping, not the loud performative kind, but slow, sincere applause that fills the room with warmth. I feel tears slip down my cheeks, but I don't hide them. This, I realize, is the true meaning of legacy. Not the buildings I designed or the headlines that once defined me, but this circle of women standing before me, proof that transformation multiplies when it's shared. For the first time once, I'm not the forgotten daughter. I'm the reminder that none of them are either. 3 years have passed since that day. The fund has grown into a nationwide movement, and my life has become quieter, more purposeful. I no longer tell my story to heal myself. I tell it so others can see themselves in it. That's what brings me here today, standing behind the red circle, on the TEDx stage, preparing to speak about the power of self-worth. I hesitate. Public speaking still makes my stomach tighten. But I know this isn't about comfort. It's about message, about closing a circle. The night before the event, I stay late in my office rehearsing. I want to speak plainly, without slides or notes. I think of the women who will be watching, those who still believe they must earn their right to exist, and I want every word to land like truth, not advice. The next morning, the auditorium hums with quiet anticipation. Red carpet, black backdrop, warm lights. I wait backstage, heart steady but aware of its weight. When my name is announced, the applause feels distant, like waves crashing far away. I step into the light. For a moment, I see nothing but the rows of silhouettes. Then I begin. For 35 years, I say I believed love was something you earn by being small, quiet, and convenient. I thought if I made myself easy to love, I'd finally be chosen. But one day, I stopped shrinking. And when I did, I realized I hadn't lost my family. I'd found myself. The room goes still. I can sense people leaning forward. I walk slowly across the stage, letting the silence stretch before continuing. Today, I want to share 5 things I've learned about self-worth. Not from success, but from being overlooked. I hold up one finger. First, stop waiting for permission to matter. The world will always give you reasons to wait: better timing, more approval, fewer risks. But waiting only teaches others that your time doesn't matter. A pause, a few nods in the audience. Second, boundaries are gates you control. People think setting limits means pushing others away. But boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you decide when to open. They protect peace, not pride. I think briefly of Emily of the years it took me to understand that loving her didn't mean allowing her to harm me. Third, forgiveness frees you. Not them, you. Carrying anger feels powerful, but it's just another form of attachment. The moment you forgive, you stop letting the wound define you. I let that sit for a moment. Fourth, your value is inherent. It doesn't rise when people notice you or fall when they ignore you. It simply is. The world can't take what it didn't give. I see someone in the front row wipe away a tear. And, fifth, success is freedom, not revenge. The best comeback isn't proving anyone wrong, it's living in a way that makes their approval irrelevant. The applause comes softly, at first then grows until the hall fills with sound. I wait for it to fade. If you remember nothing else, I say, remember this. Your worth doesn't begin when someone finally sees you. It begins when you do. I take a breath, feeling something shift in the air. To every forgotten daughter, I say quietly, stop waiting, stop earning, stop shrinking. You are already enough. You always were. For a moment, there's no sound. Then the audience rises in a standing ovation. Cameras flash, lights blur. I bow my head, overwhelmed, humbled. And then I hear a voice, rough, trembling, unmistakable from the back of the room. That's my daughter. The crowd parts, slightly, heads turning. I see him, my father, standing in the aisle. His hair is greyer, his shoulders stooped, but his eyes are the same. Tears streak down his face as he speaks again, louder this time. That's my daughter, and I'm proud. I should have said it 35 years ago. Those were the last words my father spoke to me on that stage, but they stayed with me, quiet, steady, like a song that never fades. 5 years have passed since that day. Sometimes it still feels unreal that the moment I once imagined 1,000 times actually happened, and that it came only after I no longer needed it. Life since then has been quiet, steady, and full in a way that doesn't demand noise. Daniel and I are celebrating our 5th anniversary tonight at the Palm Beach mansion where everything once began. The same ocean hums in the background, the same soft breeze moves through the palms, but the energy is different now. The house no longer feels like a fortress built out of pain. It feels like home. We've turned it into a space for gatherings, mentorship retreats, and fun events. It has become a place where people come to start again, not hide away. My parents arrived earlier in the afternoon. They've aged in the way that softens people, not hardens them. My mother still fusses over every detail, but her eyes linger on me with warmth instead of distance. My father walks with a cane, now moving slowly, pausing often, as if trying to take in every sound, every laugh. They sit together near the back of the terrace during the celebration, no longer the centre of attention, but content to be part of the evening. That's enough. Emily is here too. She's no longer the woman driven by comparison and fear. She's been working with the fund for 2 years now, officially as co-director. Watching her lead meetings, advocate for applicants, and comfort the girls reminds me of who she could always have been if she'd grown up believing she was enough. Tonight she wears a simple blue dress and carries herself with ease. She laughs easily, hugs people without tension, and when she looks at me, it's no longer with rivalry, but recognition. As the night deepens, candles flicker across the tables, and soft music drifts through the air. Daniel stands beside me, his hand warm on my back. He raises his glass to thank everyone for coming, his voice steady and affectionate as always. When he's finished, Emily steps forward unexpectedly. She holds the microphone with both hands, glancing at me before speaking. My sister taught me that being forgotten isn't the end, she says, her voice quiet but sure. It's the beginning of finding yourself. I used to think I lost everything the day she stopped needing our family's approval. But what she really did was show me what freedom looks like. The crowd grows silent, moved by her honesty. She smiles at me, his eyes bright. So thank you, Lindsay, for teaching me that love isn't something we compete for, it's something we share. I don't realise I'm crying until Daniel squeezes my hand. I nod to her, unable to speak, but she understands. After the applause fades, one of the fund's earliest scholarship recipients approaches the stage. Her name is Lila, the first young woman we ever helped. She's 25 now, a graphic designer, successful and steady. She carries a wrapped canvas under her arm. "This is for you," she says, handing it to me. I unwrap it carefully, revealing a painting of two sisters standing hand in hand by the ocean at sunset. The brushstrokes are soft, full of light. "I painted it after graduation," Lila explains. "Your story saved me and my sister. We were about to give up on each other." I stare at the image, words catching in my throat. It's us, I realise, not literally, but in spirit. Two figures facing the horizon, equal calm together. I set the painting against the wall beside the window, where the real ocean glows beyond the glass. People begin to dance, laughter spilling into the night. My parents join, slowly swaying to the music, smiling like two people who have finally made peace with time. I watch them and feel something close to grace. When the crowd begins to thin, Emily finds me by the edge of the terrace. "Walk with me," she asks. We step down the path toward the beach, the sand cool under our bare feet. The sky is streaked with orange and gold as the last of the sun dips below the water. For a long time we walk in silence, only the sound of the waves filling the space between us. It's the same shoreline where I once stood alone, convinced I would always be the background to someone else's story. Now, standing beside her, I know how wrong I was. Emily stops looking out at the horizon. "Do you think they'll remember us?" she asks softly. I turn toward her, the wind lifting her hair, the light catching her face. "I don't need them to remember me," I say. "I need me to remember who I am." She smiles faintly, nodding as if she's known the answer all along. We stand there together until the light fades completely. The world quiet except for the rhythm of the sea. Somewhere behind us, laughter drifts from the house our parents, Daniel, the girls from the fund, but out here everything feels still complete. I close my eyes, letting the sound of the waves sink in, steady and eternal. If there's a word for this feeling, I don't know it. It's not triumph, not even closure. It's peace, the kind that comes when the past finally stops asking to be rewritten. In my heart, I hear my own voice, calm and certain, carrying the words that have guided me through every storm. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to let the past stay there while you build something new. Thank you for watching until the end. Lindsay's story reminds us that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a quiet kind of strength that frees us to live on our own terms. If this story moved you, take a moment to think about what forgiveness means in your own life. Have you ever had to let go of something painful to move forward? Or maybe you're still learning to. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know how Lindsay's journey resonated with you. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. If you enjoy stories about resilience, family, and second chances, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next release. Every week, we bring you powerful tales that explore what it truly means to rebuild after betrayal and rediscover your worth. Your support helps us keep creating stories that heal, challenge, and connect people across generations. So subscribe, leave a comment, and join our growing community of listeners who believe that even the hardest endings can lead to new beginnings.